routine. And now, since she's gone, I've had to turn into a
there,
The pregnant woman who vanished, Kelsey, was 8 weeks pregnant, last seen in Pueblo, visiting her boyfriend. Friends and family would get text replies back, but they said that it just didn't quite sound like Kelsey.
I did have a sinking feeling in my stomach.
This unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car and is seen driving away with the car.
I mean, we're trying everything. Breaks my heart.
Almost 2 years after Kelsey's disappearance, a mysterious message giving everyone hope comes through that Help Find Kelsey Facebook page.
It was saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
When Laura responds, a man emails her saying, "Ma'am, please, your daughter is not dead." Kelsey Schelling grew up in the tiny farm town of Holyoke, Colorado.
Holyoke is around 2.5 to 3 hours away from Denver.
It's quiet. It's kind of have your own way. Perfect place to raise a family. Yeah, real good place. Yeah, safe. You're hoping anyway,
Holyoke is definitely agricultural. There's only one stoplight, and if you want to go to a Walmart, you've got to head west to Sterling. That's 50 miles away.
In the early 90s, Kelsey's parents, Doug and Laura, owned the local grocery store in Holyoke. Kelsey and her brother Colby seemed to be living out the American dream. I first met Laura Saxton back in 2016 when 2020 was first looking into Kelsey's story.
She's just always been a little firecracker. Hi, Kel. Hi, Cocoa Bean.
Kel.
She wasn't a kid that wanted to stay up till midnight, where you usually have to fight your kids to go to bed like at 8:30. That's when she wanted to go to bed. She'd go into her room and pull back her covers, and each animal had to be in a certain place, and everything had to be just perfect.
When she got to be 2, 3, 4 years old, she was feisty. You'd try to give her a kiss, and she'd slap me pretty good. So I kind of learned my lesson,
My first impression of Kelsey, she was just an active, outdoors, fun-loving girl, liked to do a lot of sports. When my daughter and Kelsey first met up, their true love was playing basketball together.
I was her coach, yeah. Here she is right here.
Wow, she's the point guard?
Mm-hmm.
When we were still in elementary school, her dad took us out and let us drive on the dirt roads, which is pretty common around here. Kelsey could just laugh about things like that. Her laugh made us laugh. She'd start to giggle, then you would start to giggle, and so that's what made being around Kelsey so special.
Kelsey was a tiny little thing, shorter than me.
The Kelsey that I knew didn't take a lot of crap off her classmates. She wasn't afraid to stand her ground.
But as Kelsey enters her teens, the Schelling family is rocked when Doug and Laura decide to divorce.
Going through a divorce is really hard as a kid.
Yeah, the split of our parents certainly had an impact on both of us.
Colby
lived with me, and Kelsey lived with her mom. It was a real dark time for the whole family.
It was a rough age. After her dad and I got divorced, it was just she and I together alone for a lot of years.
She was in a bad emotional place, and I don't think that was due to her character and nature. I think that was circumstantial.
Laura and I was going through a divorce. She was on antidepressant pills, and she ended up taking like 3 of them or something.
She ended up in the hospital for several days, and it was pretty scary. I thought we were going to lose her at that point.
She was in a coma?
She was.
I felt like it was a turning point. When any young school-age kid has parents who are splitting up, that's a lot to take on. Actually stopped doing all of the sports and activities. It seemed like she was more removed. I think Kelsey was just looking for a change. She wanted to figure out what was her niche.
Kelsey was always, I think, working through, how do I be better? How do I grow? How do I move past this?
Our senior year, she was the prom queen. You don't get that without showing people kindness. and respect and truly being embraced by your peers, you know.
Kelsey taught me, she taught me perseverance.
Eventually, she moves on. She goes to Northeastern Junior College. What did she want to do with her life?
She wanted to get a degree in psychology. I think in her heart, she wanted to work with children.
We officially became roommates January 2011. Where all of us were bored at 3 o'clock in the morning, she'd be the one to say, let's go cause problems, I guess. Not bad problems, she was just, out for a good time. She loved to have fun. That was her thing to do.
And for a while, carefree Kelsey is back. And then she meets Dante Lucas. He's about to change her life forever.
It was a big deal that she was dating Dante. He was part of the basketball team. They were kind of the popular kids and everything. By the time Kelsey got to know him, she felt proud that she knew who he was because he was somebody to know.
He had dreams of making it big in the NBA.
Kelsey thought she met the man of her dreams.
Marker.
Please say your full name and give us your title.
Lisa Wayne, attorney at law. Well, I had the privilege of being down in Pueblo in the 80s, and I was a public defender. Pueblo's a small town in southern Colorado. Used to be a steel mill town. The steel mill shut down in the 80s.
Pueblo was founded and built by people that came from all over the world.
We're the home of the Pueblo chili. Everyone that lives there is so proud of this town.
Kelsey's love interest, Dante Lucas, lives in Pueblo. Sarah Lucas, Dante's mother, is raising all 4 kids on her own in this Colorado town, set on what's called the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. In the town of Pueblo, a 6'7" star athlete stands out.
I coached Dante Lucas in youth football. He was my coach's dream. He was a real polite kid, wanted to learn the game of football and just really quiet. Dante Lucas was super close with his mother, Sarah. On the football field, she was one of the most supportive parents. For Dante, football wasn't his sport. I'd say he's a better basketball player, which happened later in his career through high school here in Pueblo.
Dante Lucas was a very well-known basketball player. He was going to be the one who made it out of Pueblo.
He had dreams of making it big in the NBA.
It was obvious that he wanted to pursue it, but the family spoke more about it than he did. We were told by Dante's mom, Sarah, that he was getting contacted from North Carolina and Kentucky. So their dream was that he was going to make the NBA and make a good life for himself. When I first met Dante, he was a freshman here at Central High School. He was 6'7". If you have that kind of size, you can make a lot of things happen.
It just amazed me as a guy in class that was so quiet was just as popular as he was.
He was a really good role model for the young kids in the neighborhood.
His attitude was always good. He was good with teammates. He just matured into a very good basketball player.
His overall drive as a student, from day one, it wasn't up to snuff. As a teacher, I tried to get him involved with the rest of the class. I talked to him about that several times.
Whether it was his grades or his skill, Dante didn't get into an NCAA school, but he wanted to continue to play basketball. Dante gets recruited to Northeastern Junior College in Sterling, Colorado. He's playing basketball when he meets Kelsey Schelling, and they begin dating.
Kelsey and another one of our roommates actually went to a basketball game and were scouting out the cute boys on the team, saw Dante and decided to go up and talk, and that's how she and Dante met. By the time Kelsey got to know him and really got kind of involved, she felt proud that she knew who he was because he was somebody to know. They spent a lot of their extra free time together.
When did you first meet him?
I never met him. I saw him play basketball a couple times.
Kelsey never really said anything about bringing him home to meet the parents.
He was not committed to her by any means.
Kelsey could have had anybody, but she kind of always took attraction to people that needed help, that she thought she could turn around.
I believe that if Dante was, failing or had bad grades, that his basketball career at the school would be definitely on pause. I don't honestly think that Dante really cared to learn. Kelsey would try to help him. He would just seem very disinterested and not really care.
I think she just hoped if she was good enough to him that, he would she's the one.
I think Kelsey stayed with Dante because she found someone that gave her attention even if it wasn't the right kind of attention. And I think Dante was with Kelsey because he got money from Kelsey, borrowed Kelsey's car, basically lived a life that everyone works for but didn't have to do anything for it. Just had to be there.
There were good days in the relationship with Dante, and then it just went south. He would play with her heart. I could definitely see some bubbliness fading out as he broke her spirit.
Kelsey texts Dante, "I'm really hurt. The way you talk about me to other people is your true feelings. I guess I'm just a fool. I'm so heartbroken." Days later, Dante would respond, "My phone's been dead the past few days."
And then afterwards she'd be like, "Oh, well, you know, like he's better. He's gonna be better." And then she'd be happy.
Dante left Northeastern Junior College because he was kind of done with his studies.
After Kelsey leaves Northeastern Junior College, she lands in California, but she doesn't stay there long. Why did she decide to leave?
Mostly it was financial reasons.
Where did she go from there?
That's when she moved back to Colorado. Was living in Denver in her dad's apartment, and she had started working at Floor & Decor.
When did she start going out with Dante again?
Over the holiday time frame, November, December, he would stay with her, but then he'd go back to Pueblo sometime.
Were you worried that he would come back and what that would do to her?
Absolutely. I saw what it was like before, and I didn't want that to happen to her again. She didn't want that to happen to her again, because she knew the kind of person that she became when she was with him.
How in the world did they get back together?
I don't know. She missed him, I guess.
Kelsey has a surprise for her family. She's pregnant.
She called me when she found out she was pregnant, and she was stressed, very stressed. I could tell she was scared to tell me. Just told her, I will support you. It's going to be okay. She was happy.
Did she tell you anything about Dante's reaction?
She said he was mad.
She and Dante would be texting, and he would stop responding either during arguments that they were having, or she would then get upset, wait to hear back from Dante, and left in limbo, and it was very aggravating for her.
Kelsey texts Dante, "You were my best friend. The only thing I lived for day after day. What happened to us? It wasn't supposed to be like this."
One time I talked to her, and she'd say, he's kind of coming around, and Dante will never abandon the baby.
But a child with Kelsey was not in Dante's plans.
Kelsey gets a text from Dante, and he says that he has something for her. He alludes to a surprise, and he wants her to come to Pueblo.
Kelsey had come home. When she was here, she slept a lot. I knew it was hard on her working full-time in Denver. Now with a new pregnancy, she was really tired. I said, I will support you. Whether Dante is in the picture or not in the picture, it's going to be okay. She was happy. She wanted a baby. She wanted to be a mom.
She was in a good place.
Yes. So I'm thankful for those couple of days that we got before she went missing.
My name is Zach Hillstrom. I am a reporter at the Pueblo Chieftain. I think that people have been trying to fill in the blanks about what happened to Kelsey from the time that it happened, and not just when the mystery seemed like it might be a permanent one. On February 3rd of 2013, Dante Lucas, her boyfriend, was trying to convince Kelsey to come visit him in Pueblo that day. She responded with a firm no. It seems like they fought a lot that night. Just before 3 a.m., Kelsey texted Dante, "You don't have to be in a relationship with me. You don't have to marry me. You don't have to have a happy little family with me. You don't have an obligation to me. You're good. Don't worry. Good night." Lucas's response to that was, "Oh, I know all of that. Thanks for stating that for me."
So it was February 4th, and Kelsey had taken 3 home pregnancy tests. So she went into the doctor and had the doctor confirm to her that she was actually pregnant. She got the sonogram done. She even had the photo in hand of her sonogram. She was able to share that with her mom.
What did you think when you saw the baby?
I was happy. I knew that she was happy.
She showed up to work probably 10 minutes late. She just had her ultrasound. She was really excited. She was in a great mood that day.
That morning, Kelsey told Dante that she had finished her appointment and that her due date was September 13th. Lucas's response to that was cool. He asked her to skip work and come to Pueblo. She texted him, "I'm not going to come get you so we can fight all day." He texted back, "I don't want to fight at all. I want to give you this." She writes back, "Give me what?" He says, "Just wait and see for yourself. You probably wouldn't believe me if I told you anyway, so you can see for yourself."
Kelsey decides to go down to Pueblo after work.
She clocked out of work at a little bit after 8:40 p.m. and hit the road to see Dante in Pueblo.
So Denver to Pueblo drive right down I-25. It's about 2 hours long. It's just one straight path. Not a lot of people are out on the roads. It is a lonely, quiet drive. While she's driving down to Pueblo, Dante sends her a text saying, "Let me meet at the Southside Walmart." She parks her car there.
She texted him at 10:20 saying she'd arrived, and he replied that he'd be there shortly.
She's waiting, and she's getting impatient, like any girlfriend would.
At 11:10 p.m., he still hadn't shown up to the Walmart.
That's when Dante says, "Let's meet at our spot," which is in the neighborhood of his grandmother's home, and that's where Dante was staying at the time. She moved her car there from the Southside Walmart. She was just parked on the side of the road in this residential neighborhood. So then she's left waiting there again, and she's still impatiently texting him.
The last confirmed message from Kelsey was sent at 11:18 p.m. She was asking Dante, "Where are you? I've been here for over an hour just waiting."
The following day, the 5th, she didn't show up for work. So I tried calling her, couldn't get a response. So then I shot her a text message asking her where she was, why she wasn't at work. Got a text message back right away saying that she was in the hospital having some tests done. And she said that she was not having a baby anymore, it was growing in the wrong place.
I tried calling her on Wednesday. She didn't answer her phone, which is kind of pretty rare. And I texted her, I said, "Hey, give me a call." I got a text message back, said, "I'm not feeling good, I'm on the couch, I'll call you tomorrow."
I kept trying to call, and she wouldn't answer. Toward the end of the week, it was going directly to voicemail. So then, in the back of my mind, I'm starting to get concerned.
After Kelsey had driven to Pueblo, there was never a phone call that was answered from her phone.
Kelsey is not the type of person who would, not talk to her friends. She was glued to her phone.
Friends and family would get text replies back, but they said that it came in a voice that just didn't quite sound like Kelsey. It was just short, quick responses.
Generally, any text message I had from Kelsey, words were spelled and there was punctuation, and they didn't have that.
I got to looking at the text message and it's like, man, I don't think that was her.
Why didn't you think that was her?
Just the verbiage in it and stuff. I mean, it just didn't seem like, her texting me.
Then on that Saturday morning, it's like the whole world just unraveled. All of her friends started contacting us saying, we've been trying to reach Kelsey and we can't reach her. I called Doug, her dad, and said, something is wrong. And so then we all drove up to Denver that day. Went into the apartment. There was no sign of her in the apartment. And that's when we called the Denver police.
Family members were visibly upset. They were frantic, actually, almost feverishly asking for any help they could get in trying to locate her. Did you reach out to Dante?
I did contact him to ask him, if he knew where she was.
What did he sound like on the phone? Because the call that you're making to him is, "Kelsey, the woman that you are with, the mother of your child, is missing. We are desperate to find her."
Nothing. No. Not worked up. Not, just...
He's not scared? What can I do? How can I help?
No, he just says, if I hear from her, I'll let you know. And then a little bit later, he got back with me. He said, "I heard from Kelsey. She called from a private number. She said she doesn't have her phone. And she said she'll be getting a hold of you."
Intimating that she's alive, she's out there.
And I said, "Well, can you track that number?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll try and figure out what the number was." And then, of course, he never did.
When this case first came in, I called Dante. He was telling me that he had seen her and had talked with her and spent time with her more recently than any of her family members, any of her friends. After I got off the phone, I did have a sinking feeling in my stomach. The following Friday, February 15th, that morning is when we drove down to Pueblo to turn the investigation over to the Pueblo Police Department.
We, in the beginning, were trying not to call him a suspect, just to try to build a rapport with him and try to sit down and get him to open up.
Can you kind of tell me just briefly what happened?
Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning, she came down to Pueblo.
During the course of the interrogation with Dante Lucas, he reveals some pretty shocking things about Kelsey and about the baby.
Now to the mysterious disappearance of a Denver woman.
Pregnant woman who vanished. Kelsey was 8 weeks pregnant. Seen in Pueblo visiting her boyfriend Dante Lucas.
So when do you start talking to Dante Lucas?
We start talking to him fairly quickly as far as what is going on.
Police bring Dante in for questioning, and immediately he denies a romantic relationship with Kelsey.
Now, she your girlfriend, or no? We never were actually in a relationship. Can you kind of tell me just briefly what happened?
She came down to Pueblo, and we're talking whatever. She ended up getting mad at me or whatever.
Dante tells Officer Robinson that Kelsey slept in her car in Pueblo.
He said that they met up again the following morning and that he brought Kelsey Schelling to Parkview Medical Center, where she went inside.
So, went to Parkview, and she went in and stayed for about almost 2 hours, hour 45 too.
We have no record of Kelsey Schelling ever being here at Parkview Medical Center.
Now, what do you check to find out if she was here or not?
We have a medical record system that keeps track of every patient that's ever walked through our doors.
So for you, there was no way she's ever here?
That's correct.
He alluded to the fact that she may have had a miscarriage.
She came out and she told me she wasn't pregnant.
Just the day before in Denver, Kelsey's doctor told her that the baby was healthy.
So then after we left Parkview,
Dante claimed that he and Kelsey then went to the Southside Walmart. Kelsey was going to grab some snacks before she made the drive back to Denver.
She went to go get some snacks, like something to eat, because she was hungry. And then came back out, we ended up talking, and she ended up telling me, like, get out of the car at Walmart, and she didn't want to take me home. So I just left from Walmart and started walking home. So then my mom came and got me.
But surveillance video from Walmart reveals a different version of events.
He contends that the two of them are together, and clearly, based on the surveillance, it's one person. It's him getting out of the car, and no one else exits.
When the car was parked at Walmart on February 5th, police believe that it was Dante Lucas parking that car, getting out and walking away. They have pretty good surveillance video showing it.
The car sat there overnight.
The morning of February 6th, this unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car, parked at the Southside Walmart, and is seen driving away with the car. We have no idea who that person was in that video.
It's a car that person is familiar with. And we know earlier that Dante had the key.
Who do you think that someone was that came back and drove that car away?
You know, there's similarities to Dante, but it's nothing that we can 100% say that is the person who drove it away.
When Dante Lucas talked with police, he didn't paint the best picture of Kelsey. He painted a picture of, just that she was kind of troubled.
She had like bad anxiety, she had anxiety attacks, so she had pills for that.
What can you tell me about that?
She's told me before that like she's been to like the hospital a few times for like dosing address.
Dante cast her to police as someone who had troubles with drugs. No?
I don't believe that, no.
She just one time she told me about suicide. She told me she ended up in the hospital by like multiple times.
When she was 15 years old, she did. So yes, she has had that in her past. But if she committed suicide, you would find her body. I mean, she was happy. She wanted that baby. She wanted to be a mom.
So at this point, Kelsey has been missing for more than a week. But on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2013, her car is discovered.
The car of a missing Denver woman has been found in Pueblo.
Detectives will be examining Kelsey's car.
It was big news when Kelsey's car was found at St. Mary Corwin Medical Center. How did it get there? What happened to Kelsey?
I knew once her car was found that something horrible had happened, because there's just no way that she would have gone somewhere and left her car
car and no Kelsey.
And no Kelsey. We did not have any good security footage that could tell us who dropped off the car, how the car got there. Normally, if someone was going to go away for a few days, they'd take their car with them. So we are now leaning towards foul play. So we accelerate the case.
Police start working backwards. They start going through surveillance video, and what they find is pretty surprising. Less than 12 hours after she would have arrived in Pueblo, surveillance video shows Dante in her car at an ATM in Pueblo. He's driving and he takes $400 out of Kelsey's bank account.
Is it suspicious for you that he uses that card after the date where you pinpoint Kelsey was missing?
It is part of the suspicious activity, yes.
Because Dante withdraws money from Kelsey's account without her in the car, Dante is brought in for a second time by Pueblo police.
These detectives had a wealth of information to go at him.
Where'd you get the money? The money? The money was $39 at the bank. You got videoed it in her car with her credit card. Yo, what's the 400 they're talking about? This is for my phone bill. Why didn't she go with you to the ATM? She's not in the car. It's on the video. It may have been while she was over the hospital. Honestly, I'm not sure about it. Like I said, my time frame has been messed up.
The detective moves on to another topic, talking about why there's no record of Kelsey ever showing up at the hospital.
There's no record of her ever being up for a few. That's like all I have to say.
Now here's the thing. Instead of pressing Dante on these contradictions, they move on to an unrelated topic.
Dropped her off. She dropped her off at Walmart. Where were you parked at? I mean, apparently you guys know, so, I don't understand why I told him one time, that's all I can say about her. She dropped you off, when was that again? So where, please, so she just keep asking the same questions over and over, I was speak to her.
Once he requests a lawyer, all questions come to a halt.
Unfortunately, this is a very poorly executed interview. I think it's a tremendous missed opportunity.
Once he shut down, our avenues of trying to talk to him end.
How did you read that?
As the possibility that he knows something.
Dante Lucas was arrested on February 15th. They don't arrest him on murder charges. He was arrested on felony identity theft charges for using Kelsey's debit card at the bank that day.
But those charges were later dropped when investigators found out that Kelsey did, on occasion, give him permission to use her bank card.
How do you prove she did not or did give him permission at that time? And since you had permission to do it before, it makes it a very difficult case to prosecute.
He's released. He's, living his life.
Do we suspect foul play? Yes. Have we come up with a body? No. Dante is a person of interest in the fact that she's missing.
Hoping to get Dante to talk, police bring in the person who knows him better than anyone. Mysterious disappearance.
Keep us up at night. This was a story that I spent 4 years working on and reporting on.
5 years of no answers.
I wanted so badly for there to be justice in this case.
Even though Kelsey's car was found in Pueblo, Kelsey hadn't been found. Police, maintained at that time that it was a missing persons case.
When the charges of identity theft are dropped in March of 2013, police can't get Dante to talk again.
You have a chair right there. I'll grab your water and we'll be back in a second.
So they take a different tact. They decide to speak to his mother, Sarah Lucas.
I would love to clear Dante and move on. If Dante would come in, do a polygraph, we ask him 5 questions. If he passes that, we can move on and look other directions.
I will relay that to his lawyer, and I know my son wants and more, and to find out what happened to her.
Detectives ask her about February 5th. That's the day that Dante was seen on surveillance camera parking Kelsey's car at Walmart.
Did you in fact pick Dante up?
I did pick my son up.
At that time, did you see Kelsey? Was she with him, or?
No, she wasn't with him.
Do you know where she was?
In there.
Sarah gives Dante an alibi for his whereabouts on February 6th, when that unknown man is seen moving Kelsey's car from the Walmart.
Dante or somebody that looks remarkably similar to Dante. I'm not going to say 100% was him, but went back and picked it up. There's no way that was him. There's no way he was at home. I know my son. He's not capable of hurting anybody.
But it's been 3 years since this case happened, and no one's been charged.
That's right. You have inconsistencies, lies, but without a body or any direct evidence that tells us something happened to her, to a homicide. You know, it may happen one day, but right now, it's, you know, we haven't had any evidence to reclassify it.
You look at the Pueblo Police Department, they probably didn't have as many resources, and her family quickly became frustrated with how this investigation was progressing, or kind of lack thereof any progress.
Kelsey's still not a victim, according to them. There's not been a criminal act committed, according to them. We just want an effective investigation done into Kelsey's disappearance.
Her family is pleading for your help.
We're doing everything in our power to find our missing loved one.
We tried to push Pueblo Police for answers. We were there for every press conference, every event. We just weren't getting any new information from them at all. And to me, that was so frustrating.
The investigation isn't being handled properly.
Laura Saxton always been a fierce advocate for her daughter, and I don't think she'll rest until Kelsey is found.
Many of Pueblo are not giving up on finding clues that could help find Kelsey Schelling.
Why do you think people feel so strongly about Kelsey's case?
You know, they can't believe it. You know, they try and imagine what if it was their child.
We're going to break up again over here.
In May of that year when she went missing, they started doing their own searches. They didn't think police were looking hard enough.
The whole community was rallying. There were so many searches for her body all over the city of Pueblo.
This is probably one of the largest groups we've had in a while. After 3 years, that means a lot, so thank you.
Okay.
People were scattering, just looking for any shred of evidence.
It's becoming harder to come back. I dread the trips, but I know I have to do it.
She comes home empty-handed. The one thing that she doesn't have is Kelsey.
They never found anything on those searches. Then those searches turned into anniversaries.
Kelsey Schelling disappeared 4 years ago this month.
And Kelsey's mother believes police are now closer than ever to finding her.
That turned into justice walks.
What do we want? Justice!
Around the Pueblo Police Department and the Attorney's Office.
We appreciate you all so much. Your support keeps us going.
To put pressure on our system to do something here.
We're going to keep going. We're going to keep coming up with ideas. I mean, we're trying everything.
Kelsey's family offers a $50,000 reward for information. So you feel like you're doing everything you can, even to this day, to find out what happened with Kelsey?
Yes, there is no lead we don't follow up. We followed up leads from psychics that call in. Well, they've had a vision on where Kelsey is, and we followed up those leads.
In an effort to get some more information, hopefully some tips and leads in the case, Kelsey's family also set up a Facebook page, Help Find Kelsey.
It was one source or one place where people could come together to generate information, maybe from even people that didn't want to call police.
You get a Facebook message.
It was from a woman saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous? It's so awful. He sold her in sex trafficking. I almost feel like I went insane. What if she is still out there somewhere?
We were on the ground to investigate, and I couldn't believe what happened. Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. It's Ryan Smith, ABC News.
The car sat there overnight.
This unknown man is seen walking to Kelsey Schelling's car, seen driving away with the car.
And Kelsey's just gone.
Kelsey had taken 3 home pregnancy tests.
Now, she your girlfriend or no? We never were actually in a relationship.
The lead suspect stops talking.
So I speak to a lawyer, please.
It's a dead end.
These are the stories that keep us up at night.
But an undercover volunteer befriends him.
I had to play the role that I didn't know what was happening, so I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what is happening?
Okay, they're both rolled
now. There's a sting operation.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. We're about 10 seconds away.
Marcus Ryan Smith, ABC News. How you doing?
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down.
The anxiety level was high, the tension was high.
The witness in the Dante Lucas trial
was found shot to death. Another moment where your jaw hit the floor.
When they came and told us the verdict was in, we all were just like, oh my God.
Her mother simply won't give up on finding Kelsey. For nearly 2 years, Laura Saxton had been on a desperate search for answers about her daughter Kelsey, who suddenly disappeared in February of 2013.
There will be a renewed search for clues in the case of Kelsey Schelling.
Just through seeing Laura Saxton, the tears, the sadness, the frustration, it all came, rolling out.
Many in Pueblo are not giving up on finding clues that could help find Kelsey Schelling.
The relentlessness of this mother's search really struck a chord with so many people in Pueblo. Scores of locals turned out to help Laura search all around the Pueblo area for any trace of Kelsey.
Over here on this other hike in 2 more groups.
The ride home is always really tough, going home empty-handed, emotionally and physically.
It's hard to keep hope.
As far as the hope of actually finding her, that dwindles, every day.
But then, in October of 2015, nearly 2 years after Kelsey's disappearance, there's a shocking development. A mysterious message giving Laura hope comes through the Help Find Kelsey Facebook page. That's the page that Laura had set up to gather tips and leads on the case.
It was saying, if I have information about Kelsey, can I remain anonymous?
When Laura responds, the man emails her saying, "Ma'am, please, your daughter is not dead. She will be back home alive." The man offers a harrowing account of what really happened to Kelsey. He claims that Dante hired a friend to kill her and says Dante has no idea she is alive. He thinks she is dead.
And that the friend did not kill her. He sold her into sex trafficking. It made me sick. I could barely function. What if she is still out there somewhere?
The emailer says he needs money to help Kelsey escape. $50,000 in cash. So the plan is this. The money is to be brought to Vancouver, Washington, specifically to a local McDonald's restaurant. Then it's to be hand-delivered to a guy named Marcus, who would be wearing a red hat.
Once the money was exchanged, then this courier person would go and get Kelsey and bring her back to the McDonald's. I'll have to sell some stocks, which will take about a week, but I can push to expedite that process. I just thought, what if she's been out there and I could have found her and we haven't? It was just what if?
Laura sets up the meeting at the McDonald's in Vancouver to deliver the cash. But even though she's desperate for answers, she's worried that something criminal is going on. So she reaches out to the Vancouver police and asks them to go undercover to meet this
It felt like law enforcement from Vancouver should have been involved in the situation.
But just before the appointed time, the Vancouver police back out, believing it to be an internet scam and not an actual human trafficking plot. But 2020 had the McDonald's under surveillance to see if anyone would show up. Our cameras are rolling as a man with a red hat comes in.
That's him.
He sits quietly. But after no one shows up, he takes off.
Okay, y'all move. Cut the engine.
Weird, eerie to see that they actually were, going through with this.
He's gone.
It was just all a matter of trying to get down to the truth of this.
As I was investigating this mysterious email, a contact of mine told me about another missing woman's case that proved to be the key to unraveling this mystery. In Portsmouth, Ohio, 1,200 miles away from Colorado, Megan Lancaster, 25 years old, has also suddenly disappeared.
Katie Lancaster is on a mission to help find her sister-in-law.
She's gone without a trace. We have her car and her wallet.
An eerie feeling like there's something, like we're gonna find something.
Months go by with no developments. Megan's family organizes searches and sets up a Facebook page to publicize the case.
And then, out of nowhere, he pops up.
A startling message comes through the family's Facebook page about Megan.
He says, I know where Megan is, and I can get her back.
Just like with Kelsey's family, the emailer says he can help Megan escape, but he needs money. $50,000. He directs them to bring $25,000 in cash up front to Vancouver, Washington, specifically to that same McDonald's, and deliver it to a man named Marcus, wearing, no surprise, a red hat.
What if he really does have her, and I can bring her home?
You should stick with the crew. Behind the camera, with the crew.
To unravel just what's going on with this mystery, Katie to work with 2020 to set up a sting operation.
Katie and I are going to be in one vehicle.
Just like Laura did 2 weeks earlier, she arranges a meeting to drop off the money in Vancouver at that McDonald's.
There are booths over here.
Katie, you said this morning that they sent you a text message.
They will be sending Marcus.
Okay, they're both rolling now. I would be going to this rendezvous with Katie, but wearing a hidden camera. As we walk into the McDonald's at the appointed meet time, we quickly spot Marcus, the man in the red hat, and walk over to him. Katie was instructed not to ask any questions, so I told Marcus, hey, the money is in the trunk of a car parked outside.
Right when they're at the trunk, get ready. We're about 10 seconds away.
Meanwhile, I was waiting outside with our camera team and a security guard in case this thing went sideways.
Okay, let's get ready.
As they head out to the parking lot, before the trunk is open, I walk over to Marcus. I want to get some answers.
Marcus Brian Smith, ABC News. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Why'd you come here to take $25,000 from Katie?
I don't know.
You don't know why you're here to take $25,000 from Katie?
Nope.
What are you here for?
Oh, to collect some money?
You see, Marcus claims he was suckered too, lured online into a supposed jewelry venture. He says he was supposed to pick up the money and then wire it to someone he's never met.
So a random guy tells you to go to McDonald's twice in less than 2 weeks to meet people to pick up money, and you don't think anything of it?
I didn't think none of it.
We were told that you were going to deliver Megan to Katie today. Is that true?
I have no idea about no Megan or no kidnapping or anything like that.
This would be a scheme to extort money from families who have family members that are missing.
I didn't know nothing of this. I had no clue anybody was supposed to be exchanging nothing for a human being. If I did know, I would not have been involved in this situation.
So you've been here twice, coming to pick up money at a McDonald's. Your name is attached to this.
Just feel shaky inside.
I had no clue.
It's important that you be real honest.
Yeah, I'm real honest.
You have never heard of Kelsey Shelley?
Never.
Definitely a big scam. I want to know who's behind it.
But an FBI analysis of the emailer's Facebook page showed he used an IP address traced all the way to Russia.
In most scams, they're compartmentalized. So the person you may send to pick up the cash at a particular location may know nothing about what the scam is.
Then that's just 100% clarification that, this is just some dirtbags out there, trying to get money off of these poor families.
But while the extortion plot that was torturing Laura was laid to rest, the roller coaster ride wasn't over. A sympathetic stranger who feels for Laura comes up with a shocking plan to go undercover on her own and befriend Dante to try to find the truth about what happened to Kelsey.
I knew that I was potentially putting myself into danger.
Dante Lucas?
And when we go to get some answers from Dante, she was right there with him.
What do you have to say to her family?
Even though Laura Saxton lives hundreds of miles away from Pueblo, Colorado, the news about her years-long crusade to find her missing daughter continued to resonate with folks living there.
Our top story tonight, the search for Kelsey Shelling. Today, law enforcement following new leads in the case.
We're going to keep coming up with ideas. I mean, we're trying everything.
I felt really heartbroken for her. As a mom, I couldn't even begin to fathom knowing that your child's out there.
It's spring of 2016 when Lauren Shore, a single mom living near Pueblo, says Laura's story inspired her to hatch an audacious plan of her own. Make Facebook friends with Dante Lucas, gain his trust, and meet up with him in real life, and just maybe help solve the mystery of what happened to Kelsey.
Definitely was nerve-wracking, but I felt like I could do it. So I messaged him on Facebook, and I told him that I was looking to meet new friends. He responded fairly quickly, within, let's say, a couple of hours.
Lauren was eventually able to get Dante to meet her in person. When we shot this footage of Dante playing basketball in 2016, Lauren was there with him. She says it was only the second time they'd ever met.
We had went to a basketball court to just play around, shoot some hoops, and that's when a man with a camera came up to us.
Dante Lucas, I'm with ABC News 2020. The family of Kelsey says you're responsible for her disappearance. Is that true?
Who's Kelsey? I freaked out. I had to play the role that I didn't know what was happening, so I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what is happening? What's happening? And he kind of just shut down and was like, I'll tell you about it later on. Don't freak out. It's okay. None of this is true.
As the weeks go by, Lauren says she's able to develop a close relationship with Dante.
We just hang around the family, watch movies, drink a little bit. He always smelt of alcohol. He comes off as very cocky, I feel like. He feels like he's just the man, and he can't do no wrong.
Just as she'd planned, Lauren says she got Dante to open up, to trust her enough. The time finally seemed right to ask him about Kelsey.
There was only a certain amount of period of time that he would talk about it. 1 minute he had no involvement, he had nothing to do with it, and then he would just shut down and start crying hysterically and get really upset.
But Lauren says something very unexpected happened with Dante. Her undercover relationship with him blossomed into romance.
I felt like he did genuinely develop feelings for me and did genuinely fall in love with me. He has this way about him that makes you just feel so sorry for him. In the back of my mind, I always kept that he is potentially a murderer.
Lauren says her relationship with Dante continued for about a year, but then something happened. There was an incident outside his house that made her realize she was in way over her head.
He's like, I want you to marry me. And he showed me the ring. I took the ring. At that point, I was kind of like done, because I didn't want to get in any deeper than I had already gotten into.
Despite all the efforts of this clandestine girlfriend, her work doesn't seem to be paying off, and the clock just keeps ticking for Laura Saxton. She's not any closer to knowing the truth about what happened to Kelsey.
I wasn't happy at all with how things were going, and I mean, that's one big reason why I wanted to do the first story with you guys. Was I was hoping that that would somehow bring something out into the light.
Tonight on 2020, when do you stop looking for a pregnant daughter who's vanished?
In May of 2016, our first 2020 program on the Kelsey Shelling case hits the airwaves. The very day of our broadcast, there's a big announcement regarding the investigation into Kelsey's disappearance. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation was going to join the case.
That was news to me, so I was kind of like, oh my God, this is awesome.
I think once that 2020 special aired, it really turned up the heat on Pueblo police and on this case.
Taking over the case, Pueblo Police Department Commander Eric Bravo and CBI agent Kevin Torres. Working together, they moved fast, turning it from a missing persons case into a full-blown criminal investigation.
It was a homicide investigation in our eyes, so I immediately started working on setting a plan into motion how we wanted to proceed.
Police got a tip that led them to believe Shelling's body might be in Dante's backyard.
It's not long before police dig up the yard of the house where Dante and his family had been staying.
So we thought, man, we really have something. But it went from elation to satisfaction. That day it just seemed like we were there, and then it slipped away.
During the investigation, Agent Torres finds out about Dante's relationship with Lawrence Shore. When he interviews Shore, she reveals that Dante had made a key admission to her about Kelsey's disappearance. And it's about that Walmart surveillance video of the mystery man walking over to her car and then driving off with him.
She confirmed for us Dante admitted it was him in the Walmart surveillance video. She also informed us that Dante admitted to her dropping Kelsey's car off at St. Mary Corwin Hospital. The piece of information that Lauren provided to us was a pretty crucial piece at that point.
Then, in late 2017, there's a huge development that will totally transform the case. A Pueblo man tells police that Dante and other family members had attacked him in front of their home and stolen $1,000 from him. Now that gives police a reason to arrest Dante.
I had information that Dante was leaving Pueblo and was heading to DIA, where he seemingly intended to board a flight to Tucson. And the concern was that he may take other efforts to meet friends in Mexico.
Boy, the anxiety level was high, the tension was high.
The time was ticking away, and the tires were turning on the road. And Dante was within 20 minutes of getting on a plane for Tucson, Arizona, when he was arrested.
When he was arrested, there was hope across the community that maybe investigators would finally get some answers in this case.
We decided that the next day would be the day that we would send a couple detectives back in to try and answer some of the questions that we didn't have answered.
During his interrogation, Dante finally breaks down and comes clean, confirming Lauren Shore's account that he was the one seen in that Walmart video.
So that information that he confirmed that was him was huge.
You see, it was that admission, combined with the wealth of evidence from text messages, cell phone records, and surveillance video already gathered, all of that was enough for prosecutors to move forward.
At the end of the day, I said, I think we have enough here to go forward. I ethically believe that Dante Lucas killed Kelsey Schilling, and I think we have the evidence to prove it.
A major development, the ex-boyfriend of a pregnant Denver woman who went missing 4 years ago. He now faces charges of first-degree murder.
How are you thinking as his trial approached? Are you thinking justice will be done?
I put a lot of things on hold because I just was, sure it was going to happen and, wanted to be ready to go.
So after 8 years, Dante Lucas is finally in court, and the prosecution has a surprise witness.
That just took the whole room's breath away. No one saw that coming. This story became such a big deal here in Pueblo because people want answers and they haven't gotten any for 8 years.
Dante Lucas, the Pueblo man accused of murdering his pregnant ex-girlfriend Kelsey Schilling nearly 8 years ago, is headed to trial tomorrow.
Did I think it was going to be a tough case? Absolutely. And we well may not win it. But I owe it to the family. I think I owe it to Kelsey to go forward and try this case.
KRDO News Channel 13's Dan PD has been following this case and the trial for more than 2 years.
I was anticipating there to just be a mad rush of reporters who were going to try to get into the courtroom. I was very worried that I might not even get a seat. You could feel the anticipation. When I saw Laura Saxton walk into the judicial building, you could tell this was a day she's been waiting for a long time.
Denver 7's Liz Gilardi in Pueblo today for opening statements. Liz, you have been with this case every step of the way now for all these years.
The prosecution simply started out and they said, this is not a missing persons case, this is a homicide case.
The case that the prosecution was making right off the jump was, one, they were going to prove through text messages and surveillance video that Dante Lucas has to be the one responsible for Kelsey Schilling's death.
These were two people in a relationship. Kelsey Schilling became pregnant. Dante Lucas didn't want to have a baby. And he made sure that didn't happen.
I know that she had mentioned Kelsey Schilling's Chevy Cruze.
The prosecution said this car tells a story, and they told the jurors that you will see Dante Lucas moving this car around Pueblo in the days after she went missing.
The idea that someone can essentially disappear without a trace, I think, is kind of a counterintuitive thought for people to have.
Prosecutors think there's enough evidence to convict Lucas even without a body, but the defense disagrees.
In the opening statements, the defense said this is a missing persons case. This has always been a missing persons case. They said there's no body, there's no evidence. Why should you believe that Dante Lucas killed her?
They do not have a crime scene. They do not have a murder weapon.
Today, the jury got a detailed look at some of the text messages exchanged between them.
For the prosecutors, their goal was to show that those text messages showed intent, showed that Dante Lucas consistently lied, not only to investigators, but to Laura Saxton herself.
What they referred to as his luring of Kelsey to Pueblo.
The prosecution say that he lured her there to end her life.
We know that that's his phone. He admitted to those text messages. We know that that's his thoughts and feelings about it. That's direct evidence.
And the movements of their phones as well, as they were pinging off cell phone towers in Pueblo on the night of February 4th and the early morning hours of February 5th. I think that a lot of the case really centered around those movements.
Two pivotal witnesses testified in the high-profile Pueblo murder case against Dante Lucas.
First witness was Laura Saxton, and we were not expecting Laura Saxton to be the first one to take the stand. She didn't break down, but you can tell she's hurting. There's a lot of pain behind her voice.
I think that was really powerful for the jury to see. Her mom spoke to the fact that she absolutely wanted this baby.
Prosecutors today painted Kelsey Schilling as an excited mother-to-be, desperate to make it work with her boyfriend.
It didn't take long for the prosecutors to swing for the fences, calling some pretty shocking witnesses to the stand.
Diane Rivera is a former Pueblo County inmate who considered himself to be a friend of Dante Lewis.
And when he took the stand, he said that Dante Lucas told him that they're never going to find Kelsey Schelling's body. That just took the whole room's breath away.
Ryan Rivera, he was the only person who came forward over the duration of this trial that really said, Dante told me he did this.
I wasn't in the courtroom, but while jailhouse snitch on its face is just not credible. I mean, that's the assumption that we believe jurors have, and it's the assumption we have as defense lawyers. Why would this person do it? What's the benefit? What's the motive?
There was no deals made about charges he would get to plead to, time he would get to serve. There was no deals like that.
There were a lot of names on the prosecutor's list that I was shocked by, but Sarah Lucas certainly topped that list.
When you saw that Sarah Lucas was on the prosecution side, everyone wondered, what is she going to say?
The one important thing that I've kind of mentioned, she confirmed, that Dante was the last person left alone with Kelsey.
The prosecution painted a picture of a troubled relationship.
Some of Kelsey's close friends testified. They pointed toward elements of domestic abuse in Kelsey and Dante's relationship.
Something worth pointing out was the prosecution and even the defense made it clear that Dante was using Kelsey for a number of things. For her money, Dante used Kelsey for her apartment in Denver, and Dante used Kelsey for her car. And his argument was, she lets me do it. The defense pushed the narrative that Kelsey Schelling popped pills, was an addict, that Kelsey, when she left Dante Lucas at the Southside Walmart here in Pueblo, that she was going to meet up with a drug dealer.
There's no single person, other than the defendant in 2017, who's saying that she was into drugs and that she was a party girl.
You didn't have the forensic evidence. It seemed like you were really relying on circumstantial evidence and the evidence of snitches and these other witnesses. That's pretty straightforward. Either you believe them or you don't.
The witness list yields more surprises. The ones who make it to court.
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down.
And the ones who didn't.
Witness 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez was found shot to death.
It was a completely unforeseen development in this case.
Breaking on Denver 7, a key witness in the Kelsey Schelling murder trial found dead.
That witness, 31-year-old Roxanne Martinez, was found shot to death in Denver last week.
These are still very stunning developments.
Roxanne Martinez, a witness for the prosecution, was set to testify soon.
That was just an absolutely, completely unforeseen development in this case. People were reeling when that news broke.
Denver police officers were called to a residential area in southeast Denver on a report of an unresponsive female who was lying in the roadway. We determined that that individual had been shot one time and died from that injury. Her dad is in shock, her mom, her stepmom. It's just, tragic all the way around.
I think when a witness in any major case turns up dead directly before they're set to testify, I think, of course, people are going to think, was she killed because she was going to testify?
Denver police arrested a suspect in Martinez's killing, 29-year-old Emmanuel Chandler. Chandler has been charged with first-degree murder, but he hasn't entered a plea yet.
We don't have any connection between Mr. Chandler and Mr. Lucas or anybody associated with that trial.
Our concern was to make sure that people understood that while she was an endorsed witness, I couldn't comment on her testimony.
Nobody knows what Roxanne Martinez was going to say on the stand for sure, with the exception of maybe the investigators who talked to her.
But while prosecutors say they can't discuss what Roxanne Martinez would have said on the stand, 2020 has uncovered some revealing details about her. You see, back in March of 2016, a woman named Roxanne had reached out to Laura Saxton through that Help Find Kelsey Facebook page. Roxanne messaged that she used to date the guy Kelsey was pregnant with, and he told me what had happened and started crying.
I'm instantly mixed emotions, okay, are you going for the reward or, are you for real?
When Laura asked, do you know where Kelsey is located? Roxanne replied, he told me everything. Yes, I do.
Basically, her information sounded very good and very promising, and so we really wanted to meet with her.
This mysterious woman agreed to meet Laura and her husband at a Mexican restaurant in Denver.
We were actually on our way there, and I tried to reach her by phone to let her know we were coming. She said that she was in the hospital and couldn't meet us. That was kind of the extent of what I really remember. And then, past that, then, that was all turned over to law enforcement to look into further.
Authorities say that woman was the same Roxanne who was killed during the trial.
I can confirm that CBI followed up and interviewed her, that we did have her as an endorsed witness, that we wanted to testify during trial. The thing that I'm steering clear from is I don't want to talk about evidence that wasn't actually admitted during trial.
Martinez's killing shakes up the trial and threatens to overshadow the testimony of another prosecution witness who had a remarkable story to tell. It's none other than Lauren Shore, that woman who befriended Dante as part of a plan to try to find out what happened to Kelsey.
I know that my testimony could potentially help take him down, and that was realistically why I wanted to testify.
Shore testifies about Dante's critical admission to her, that he was the mysterious figure seen picking up Kelsey's car after it sat overnight in a Walmart parking lot.
I said, so that must have meant that you had dropped the car off at the hospital, correct? And that's when he said, yes, that was him that dropped the car off.
When the defense cross-examined Shore, they attack her credibility and her motives, at one point characterizing her as a sex informant because she had a physical relationship with Dante.
It's fair game, and if you're going to put yourself out there like she did and sleep with someone, the jury ought to know about that. You're having intimate conversations, and that casts a lot of suspicion on her as a witness.
The sex informant part really bothered me because I wasn't having sex with Dante to get answers out of him. I was playing my part and role as girlfriend. So to me, to be called such was really, really degrading.
On the very last day of its case, the prosecution played an interrogation video of Dante confirming Shore's account.
The clip that I played at the beginning of my closing was his phrase to detectives, "I lied from the jump. I moved the car." I wanted the jury to hear the defendant, in his own words, say, "I lied."
When it's the defense's turn to present its case, they raise a lot of eyebrows in court.
The defense didn't call a single witness to the stand. The defense immediately rested their case. And it was just another moment where your jaw hit the floor.
The burden of proof is on the government. It's simply messaging in a very strong way to the jury, they haven't done it. It's not guilty. So it's a strong message.
There was just really not a lot of hard forensic evidence to go off of. So as far as, what evidence they put forth to court that was irrefutable, that Dante Lucas killed Kelsey Schelling, I never saw that.
After a shocking final day of the trial, the jury was going to deliberate, and I had no idea what was going to happen at that point.
I think everybody was just like holding their breath.
Prosecution and defense have given closing arguments. The jury is now deliberating.
Well, on that last day of the trial, no one expected to get a verdict that day.
So now the waiting begins.
Yes. And I was prepared to camp out at the courthouse as long as I had to. I really thought I would be there all week, and we're really totally unprepared for when they came and told us the verdict was in. I think we all were just like, oh my God.
I mean, it was shocking how quickly they arrived at their decision, especially given just the amount of information they had to look at.
I can tell you, because the decision came back so early, all of our experience as prosecutors is that this was probably an acquittal, because juries tend to come to decisions more quickly on acquittals than convictions.
It was like standing on the precipice of a cliff and looking down. It was scary.
It was a very tense atmosphere in the courthouse while everyone was waiting to hear what the verdict was.
Even I was nervous, and I'm not affiliated with Kelsey Schelling's family at all.
People were wondering, does that mean Dante Lucas is going to walk?
I think everybody was just like holding their breath almost.
And then, when you hear the verdict, tell me how you're feeling.
Well, the words came out way too slow. Like, I feel like the judge was talking in slow-mo, even though he wasn't. I mean, I was just like, every word, it's like, okay, spit it out, please. And then he finally got to, guilty of first degree. And I think that was the first breath like I had taken in a long time.
This is a guilty verdict 8 years in the making, and even though Kelsey Schelling's body has never been found, the jury clearly felt there was...
Without parole.
It was just so emotional for everybody, for both sides. It's a sad story. It's a sad situation that didn't have to end up like this if he had just let her come home.
You mentioned it was a lot of emotions for both sides. Did you find yourself looking over at their side?
Dante was sitting right in front of me. I looked at the back of his head through the whole trial. But, you know, the mother of his child was there, and she broke down, and honestly, my heart hurt for her, for their child, because it didn't have to end up this way.
Ryan Rivera's testimony was the biggest, bombshell for our trial. It had moved us all. I could hear the gasps even in the masks of fellow jurors.
When it came out that he was convicted, I think there was a great feeling of not elation. You know, you have to look at it from this side too. Mr. Lucas is a young man, and he was convicted of a criminal crime that shapes his life for however long he lives. I think it's every parent's worst nightmare that a child goes before you, and you never fully heal that wound. I can tell you, I almost lost a child in the early 80s. And so I had a lot of sympathy with Laura and her family because I came that close to that tragedy. And that child was the lead prosecutor on this case.
So the elected DA is my dad, and Kyle McCarthy, who was obviously on the case with me, is my husband. And we, I don't think, had a night in the last 4 years that we haven't gone home and talked about Kelsey Schelling. Sometimes it's the first thing we talk about when we wake up. Sometimes it's the last thing we talk about before we go to sleep.
On Saturdays when we're driving kids around the soccer, a lot of times we're being told to stop talking about it because they can hear us in the front seat talking about it.
We both also had, an incredible emotional pull to the family. That is a very special relationship, one that I will value for the rest of my life.
Well, I think, Michelle and Kyle with their closing, they're amazing. I don't even know what other words to use.
The first things that she told the reporters outside of the courthouse after the guilty verdict, yes, she was happy, but she was still devastated.
So we're very, very thankful for this outcome. But in the end, I didn't get Kelsey back. And that's what I wanted more than anything. So I feel like I didn't do something, I didn't push hard enough on something, or I didn't look enough on something to bring her home.
That devastation isn't going anywhere. Like she said, she has to live with that forever.
Her goal throughout all of this was to bring Kelsey home, give her a proper burial. So I know she had expressed that in some ways she felt like she had failed in her main mission.
I think the investigative team has some ideas where she may rest.
If that's where she is, that's just like the worst possibility to me.
That very first day that we met in September of 2016, I'll never forget it like it was yesterday, and it was just a special bond that we formed.
Kelsey's mom just battled and battled and battled. 8 years, I was hoping that it would never take this long. I grabbed my mother very tight and held her very close, held on to my dad's hands.
Since the trial's over, it's because, and Kelsey still hasn't been found, so that I've just felt very empty this past week.
It doesn't feel final because we still don't know where Kelsey is, and we still don't know exactly what happened.
It turns out that prosecutors did present troubling evidence from the night Kelsey disappeared. That evidence provided a possible explanation to where her body could be.
We received information from the Port landfill that there was some video evidence of a vehicle being there. You couldn't see what kind of vehicle. You couldn't tell who was in the car. They're locked to their front gate into the dump had been tampered with.
Well, it caught my attention when I grabbed the lock on my hand, and I said, well, somebody tried to get in here overnight.
The cell phone records, the pings were all out in that area. So we suspected that's what happened.
If you heard the testimony of the landfill expert, it would be next to impossible to just find a body just by conducting a search of the landfill.
Who wants that for their child to be the final resting place? No one.
We want to bring her justice and bring her home with us. Her and Kadri both. Kadri, that was the name that she was going to give the child.
I'm never going to recover without getting her back, and so I still have nowhere to go to take her flowers, to go sit and talk with her, take her balloons on her birthday, go to see her on the holidays.
How do you want her to be remembered?
A little girl with a really big heart, a really big smile, a really big laugh, beautiful eyes, silly. She was so silly. I miss being silly with her. I miss all the things that we didn't get to do together.
Gardaí today made a major breakthrough in what was particularly brutal and disturbing murder. This morning, in a series of raids, Gardaí arrested 4 people in connection with the murder. They can all be held for up to 12 hours.
A large team of detectives have spent the day examining the scene around Ballybock Bridge in North Dublin, where the shocking discovery was made last night.
The body was in 7 different parts.
Whoever owned these body parts had suffered a very violent and gruesome end.
Head and penis were missing.
The case was at a standstill for quite a long time.
We have very little clue who the deceased was.
All they really had to go on was this white Ireland jersey.
Somebody contacted the Gardaí to say that he saw his friend wearing it.
He was identified as Farah Swally Noor.
That was the real breakthrough in the case.
This man was capable of holding acts.
He was in a relationship with Kathleen Malone.
The violence erupted very, very quickly in that relationship as well.
We were able to position Kathleen and her 2 daughters in and around the area at that particular time that we believed that he was killed. We were quite satisfied that they were involved in his death.
At that time, the media interest was huge, and it was almost 4 months after the murder. There was inklings that, there's movement there, there's arrest, there's something happening.
You come to a point where you have to make a decision. Do we have sufficient evidence that would ground an arrest in this case? And I was of the professional opinion, as a police person, yes, we had sufficient grounds to arrest John, Kathleen, Charlotte and Linda.
One of the reasons the Gardaí looked at John as a potential suspect was local CCTV cameras captured his van driving in and out of the estate on the day that Farah died.
Based also on other information that came into us, confidential information came in to say that Kathleen, Linda and Charlotte had actually been involved in the murder, and that the body had been deposited in the canal. 2 people came forward to tell us that, but they weren't in a position or weren't willing to commit that to a statement.
There was a very unusual step taken by the guards, and essentially they asked for a media blackout, which was respected actually across the press, and nobody said a word about the arrests.
We had decided at a very early stage there would be no bells and whistles, no sirens, no blue lights, that this would be a low-key arrest, and all the arrests were very low-key.
I was part of the arrest team that went to arrest John Mulhall. John was working for a glazing company, putting in windows over in a building. He was visibly shocked that he was being arrested. He was a strong character, robust enough, well able to engage with the police.
And Gardaí methodically questioned the four suspects about what they believe had happened that day in Richmond Cottages.
Normally interviews don't last any longer than in lower 4 hours, but your period of detention at that time is an initial period of six hours, which can be extended. And in this case, all their periods of extension were extended. So the full time period allocated was used up.
Initially, Linda, Charlotte, Kathleen, John, all cooperative up to the point where they will tell you what they were at, thereabouts, but they weren't admitting any part in a murder. So we knew ourselves that this was going to be a difficult investigation.
This was a crime of the most unimaginable, macabre details. You're looking at two women that were not known offenders. How do you make the leap from these two girls sitting in front of you? You say they didn't do it, to a body in pieces with his head missing.
After that, we were in contact with the DPP's office, the Director of Public Prosecution's office. I was reasonably confident that we had sufficient evidence to lay charges against some of them. We had CCTV off them the next day. They were in buying cleaning products.
After 12 hours of questioning, the DPP said there was not enough evidence to charge any of the suspects. They were all released without charge. That was a major blow to Gardaí, who had made so much progress in this investigation that no charges were directed. They needed another major breakthrough in order to progress it.
Even though we didn't have the admissions that you would have in some cases, it was this very strong circumstantial case, I believed, but obviously others didn't. So it was back to basics with us.
You can't leave any loose end, however innocuous it may appear. The level of proof is so high.
We had a conference the next day, and we were very deflated.
It was suggested to Christy Mangan that that was the end of this for a while, park it, move on to something else. He felt he couldn't do that. Gardaí had already built up a picture of Faris Wallinor, and they knew this wasn't a good guy. They treated the three women and John with a huge amount of respect, and that made a big difference to the investigation.
John was very, very happy that he was treated in a very professional way by all of the detectives who were present. So he told us that we should keep talking to Linda as she knew where the head was buried. The only way he could know that is if she told him.
The two lead Gardaí go to the house where John lives with his daughter Linda.
Linda was very pleasant to engage with. She would always make tea or coffee when you were out of the house.
They could see that there was a dreadful drain on the girl. She was in a sore, sad situation. They said he could see in her face she was very, very, almost physically burdened. So he felt that they were close. He must have approached her with a lot of sympathy and respect. This woman wasn't used to receiving respect off men.
She didn't engage about the murder at all, but was quite willing to talk about her family. We left after about maybe 40 minutes. I had to go over to Coolock to investigate another crime over there. She rings me on my work mobile phone, and she's crying. She wants me to come back up. We agreed with her that we would go back up at 5:15 that evening. We arrived at the house. John was there.
Opened the door and said, Linda's upstairs in the room. He knew what was coming. He showed an extraordinary sense of right and wrong, helped Linda to offload and tell people what really happened.
You could see that she was tearful and crying, and we spoke with her for approximately 4 hours, 20 minutes in relation to what had happened in Richmond Cottages on the night of the murder.
Kathleen and Farah went into Dublin city centre, which wouldn't have been far from their home, to have a few drinks. It was still the aftermath of kind of Paddy's Day celebrations.
St. Patrick's weekend in Ireland, you won't be surprised, is pretty big. There's a weekend of parades and people off work and people celebrating, people drinking.
Mischief, mayhem and madness is the theme of this year's St. Patrick's Day parade, and today passers-by on Custom House Quay got a little taste of what's to come.
Kathleen rang her daughter Charlotte and come in and meet us, have a few drinks. She rang her sister Linda and she said, "Do you want to come into town?" Linda didn't want to, actually. She wanted to stay and look after her kids.
But one of her brothers then said they would take care of the children, and she got herself ready and headed into town.
The plan was just have a few drinks and soak up the Paddy's Day atmosphere that was going on.
So they met on the boardwalk. The girls had been drinking heavily and they had taken ecstasy, and then they met up with their mother and Farah, and the mother took ecstasy and alcohol as well.
They were in quite a bad way, all of them. They refused entry into a number of pubs in the city that day because of the state they were in. And ultimately, because of this, they decided to go back to a flat in Richmond Cottages in Ballybock, where Kathleen and Farah Swallynor were living, to continue the party there.
The fact that they went on this session with their mother said something of the nature of this functional family relationship.
Farah was very drunk very quickly. He was more drunk than they are. And again, this Jekyll and Hyde character, he was behaving quite strangely, quite irrationally.
He was starting to fight with Kathleen. The girls were a bit uncomfortable. The girls walked ahead and were trying to ignore the carry-on.
On the way back to the house, Farah saw this young Asian kid, and he had got it into his head somehow that this was his kid, and started abusing this child on the street as they made their way back.
He started pushing the child, trying to bring the child away by the hand. Kathleen was furious, screaming at him, trying to leave the child alone, which he did finally.
The row between Kathleen and Farah was definitely escalating, and things were beginning to reach kind of fever pitch as they arrived back.
They continued drinking. Kathleen crushed up an ecstasy tablet and put it into Farah's drink because she wanted him to be on the same buzz that the three girls were on.
Farah sits on Linda's knee and he's essentially groping her, making suggestions to her, and she tries to brush him off, and the situation rapidly gets out of hand.
He then became very creepy and made extremely lewd comments to Linda.
He said they were both creatures of the night. He also was saying to her, "You look just like your mammy, you look just like your mammy."
And she just became deeply uncomfortable and started shouting at her mother to tell him to stop. Kathleen did, of course, step in, and then a huge row erupted between Farah and Kathleen, and he made a gesture that he was going to slit her throat. It was at this point that Kathleen started exhorting her daughters to kill him. She said, "He's going to kill me. Please kill him for me, please."
And that was the beginning of what was one of the most brutal and horrendous murders of any person in Ireland that we've ever seen.
Charlotte picked up a Stanley blade and she cut Farah's neck very, very cleanly with it and cut an artery. This alone would have been enough to kill him. He got up and he kind of stumbled to the bedroom and he fell down and he banged his head off the bedpost.
Two of them then attacked him for a significant period of time. That had been exhausting.
At this stage, it's chaos. Kathleen is screaming. Farah is screaming.
It was a very frenzied attack. Charlotte stabbed him 27 times.
This certainly is up there in terms of level of depravity. It's like the whole hatred of everything about those girls' lives has just come out in that moment. 30 years of events in your life just all played out in that room.
They attacked him until they were sure he was dead.
The three girls were left looking at this man lying on the floor with blood all over the flat. They're in a situation now, is okay, what do we do next?
They realised they couldn't get his dead body out of that house. One of the women in their wisdom decided the only thing to do was to dismember his body.
Charlotte and Linda dragged his lifeless body into the bathroom.
They set about dismembering his body, which they do using the kitchen knife, the Stanley knife, and a hammer to smash through the bones.
We had initially thought that power tools would have been used to cut up the bones, but that wasn't the fact.
This would have taken several hours. Linda told Gardaí in one of her interviews that after cutting off one of his legs, like blood was literally spurting out, and they'd use towels to stem the blood.
Parts of his flesh, they flushed down the toilet. This is happening in a very small flat. The stuff of nightmares.
They had decided to cut off his head to make sure that he wouldn't be identified.
Linda cut off his penis, and she said later that she had done that so that he would never again rape her mother.
I don't know any other display over a man that could have been so violent and so gruesome as this.
The man's penis is signal of that kind of control and dominance that you have lived your life under. So this was again driven by that desire to put an end to the abuse that you have suffered your entire life.
In that moment, they had all the power. He had none. Maybe for the first time.
Farah's body is dismembered into 8 parts.
If you took one of the elements of these crimes and on its own, it's brutal. I mean, the idea that it would be beyond most people and our capabilities, you know, even in the fit of rage, even with drinking drugs. But add it all together, the escalation of it over the evening, it's extraordinary what happened and what they were capable of doing. There's a certain element of your humanity that has to be parked. All of this happened the day before Charlotte's 22nd birthday. It shows like how young these girls were when they were doing this. They had their whole lives ahead of them.
Kathleen had produced a number of bags, so his body parts were put into black bags, and then she seemed to have some kind of sports bags, and his torso with the Ireland jersey on it was put into one of these kind of big sports bags.
They then went to the shops, they picked up more cleaning supplies, and they went about trying to clean up the apartment. They spent hours scrubbing the blood from the walls, from the floor, and it's not an easy task to clean up a murder scene like that with blood everywhere.
They would have been literally covered in blood, because when somebody's cut in a vein, there's going to be spray of blood. The crime scene would be actually an abattoir.
They had done an amazing job on cleaning up the apartment. They had removed the carpet, put a new carpet down. They'd removed the wallpaper from the wall. There was very little traces to indicate that that was the scene of murder.
The cleanup was very forensic. Our initial examination didn't show large areas of blood, which you would have thought would have been very obvious, but it wasn't.
Kathleen Mulhall rang her former husband John and told him he needed to come over and help them, that the girls were in a terrible situation.
That, to me, is the conundrum of the complexity of those kinds of family dynamics. So he was an abuser, but yet he was the ex-partner and the father. So he had a pivotal role to play. And in a moment of crisis, who do those three women still call? It was the father. Who else would they call? They're not going to call the guards. They're not going to call social services. They are going to call somebody who gets them and who might be in a position to help them. And that's what they were hoping.
He did arrive at the house and he came in and he observed that Faraz Wali Noor was in pieces in various bags and he was horrified. He actually went outside and got sick. and refused to help and fled from the house.
It's believed that he went back at some stage in the early hours of the morning in his glazier's van and helped remove the blood-stained carpet and probably other material from the house into the back of the van, and he drove away and disposed of that.
There was no love lost between John and Kathleen. I mean, at best it could be called acrimonious, but he was called upon to help to come and see his daughters, and he did do that.
It must have been horrendous because of what they were faced in for a number of hours, sitting there making decisions as to what they were going to do, how they were going to clean it up, and then literally gather up every part of the remains, and then have to complete the task, bring those down and put them in the canal.
It took about 6 trips between them all, up and back and up and back.
They literally just went around the corner. It's not suggestive of anyone with any kind of criminal acumen. It's a very shallow part of the canal as well, and he wasn't weighted down. They had disposed of his remains, but they still had his head, and they did not want to put that in the same place because they felt that that was identifiable. So they made a decision that they were going to bring it home to Tala.
They put the head into a camera bag. They had gone and they got some food, and then they got on a bus.
They got the bus all the way to Tala. They took it to a place called Sean Walsh Memorial Park.
They went to just a park bench and they debated, where will we go, what will we do?
The worst part of this crime, if there was one, is the very mundane, everyday details that happened. Going to buy a breakfast roll, they were seen eating it on CCTV with Farah's head in their backpack. The idea that you'd even want to eat in the middle of all of this, it just goes to show the compartmentalization that they must have had to cut off or to forget about or to park for some time what they've done.
Charlotte, finally, she just became so exhausted, so infuriated and intoxicated by what they had done. She decided she couldn't take any more, and she dug a hole there and then right beside the bench and put his head into it and covered it over as best she could, but they hadn't done a great job.
Kathleen threw the kitchen knife and the hammer away at this point. They left and went about their daily business with the head buried in the park in Tala.
In the aftermath of the murder, the 3 women began to unravel because the enormity of what they'd done really began to sink in. Linda didn't deal with it very well at all.
She found it difficult to get Farah's face out of her mind. She seems to have had what one would call nightmares about his face and the look on it, and that affected her deeply, and she descended further into drink and drugs.
It seems to have affected Linda more than it did Charlotte. There's a difference there in the psychological makeup of those 2 girls. She wasn't getting the help that she required, but was masking it through alcohol, drugs, self-harming behaviours, all the hallmarks of an individual who was deeply, deeply traumatised.
Drink and drugs, they say it causes a lot of violence. It can cause people to act in ways that they never would when they're sober. I can imagine that this took away a lot of the pain. It numbed. It probably helped them to, cut off from what they were doing, compartmentalise, just get through it. That can work up to a point. I cannot imagine what it was like the next day, waking up after that night, knowing what you had done, knowing the 3 of you together have this dark secret and crime that you committed. And as the drink and drugs wear off, I mean, I'm sure they took them again over the next couple of days to try and deal with it, but you can only do that for so long. Your conscience is going to come back to haunt you.
Kathleen Mulhall and Charlotte Mulhall engaged in relationships with there was Russian neighbours they're supposed to have had affairs with. They emptied Farah's Noor's bank account. They seemed to party a little bit and go off and enjoy his money in the days that followed, almost completely oblivious to the mayhem that they caused only days earlier.
Kathleen was their main person of interest because Kathleen was Farah's partner. All roads pointed back to her, so she was kind of the first person that they that they sought to speak to. She had made up a story that he had left her, that apparently he'd fathered a child with some other girl and he'd ran away and she didn't know where he was. She even went down to the social welfare office in an effort to cover her tracks, really asking, can you tell me where he is? I'm worried about him, all this kind of stuff.
There's certainly no truth in those versions of events. They were very self-serving. They suited her needs at the time, and it was an avoid and deflect strategy on her behalf.
Kathleen in particular developed this great obsession with cleaning. She was forever buying cleaning products. She was forever scrubbing the house down, believing that she might have missed a spot here or missed a spot there.
Kathleen had become very unhappy with living in the apartment that Farah Noor had been murdered in, so she sought to be moved, and she was moved upstairs. Obviously, our suspicions were heightened by the fact that Kathleen wanted to be out of that apartment. It wasn't unusual for somebody not to want to be in such a location where a barbaric crime had taken place. One morning, Detective Sergeant Fox and myself had cause to visit the apartment. We were looking to meet and speak with Kathleen. She wasn't best happy with our presence at the apartment. Eventually, she came down, let us in, and we went upstairs, and it was then we discovered that Charlotte was actually living in the very small bedsit as well.
A large team of detectives have spent the day examining the scene around Ballybock Bridge in North Dublin.
They were all watching the news.
Discovery was made last night.
They had seen the body parts being taken out of the canal.
Linda was more concerned and more remorseful about what she had done.
There's an incredible night where it's lashing rain and she's in the house. She starts to get this anxiety and panic attack. I'm sure we all know those now, when fear starts to eat away at you. This is a different level. It's raining. It's going to wash away the mud. The head that we've buried is going to come up and our crimes are going to be exposed, and I got to go out and do something like this.
Part of the head was poking out of the ground, and it was actually seen by a couple of people, which is amazing. Two park rangers saw it and thought that maybe it was a dog. Another man saw it who used to go to the park most days, and he would sit at this bench and read a book and have a drink, and he saw it and he thought it was a head. And by this time they were aware that a headless body had been found, but he decided not to report it because he didn't think anyone would believe him.
She went out that night, dug the head up, put it in a child's school bag and took it away.
She went walking with a bottle of vodka, and then she went into a field. I actually went into that field with her at a later stage, and we go over into a ditch. She was able to identify that that's where she sat for a considerable period of time talking to Farah and drinking the vodka in a very distressed and distraught state. She kissed the bag and told Farah she was sorry.
Gardaí believed that is what broke her. Going back, retrieving the head, and believing he was talking to her.
Linda bashed it with a hammer to try and destroy it even further. And she set it alight.
We conducted a 2-week detailed search of the area, and we never found any part of the deceased head. It is quite possible that an animal took the bag away.
Even in the middle of their emotional reaction to what they had done and the drink and the drugs and presumably guilt and all this with Linda seeing Farah's face, Charlotte was saying to her, "It'll be all right, just say nothing, keep quiet."
But Charlotte, when she was drunk, confided in her sister Marie. Marie just said it was just so unbelievable. She just thought, she can't be serious.
The women themselves, they had spoken within their own family unit. They'd spoken to John, Kathleen's ex-husband, the girl's father. They'd spoken to their two brothers in prison, so everybody knew within their family. So that complicated matters hugely in a family of such huge dysfunction. It didn't take long for one of their brothers from prison to make contact with Gardaí to try and give an account of what had happened.
at the time of the killing of Farah and John's involvement going around to the house, he of course had other things in his mind as well about his children. Here he finds his daughters involved in something horrific. But two of his sons, John and James, were at that time in prison, both of them on motoring offences, one of them for having killed somebody.
John and James Mulhall contacted guards and said, we can give you every detail about this crime, why it happened, who did it, where they live. We want to be moved to a better prison. We want to move to Shelton Abbey, which in Irish criminal circles is where you want to go if you're in prison. It's a much easier regime. Of course, these lads are in a much, much tougher place, surrounded by the hardest criminals in Ireland. And they decided this was not what they wanted long term. And if they could do something to render the rest of their years purpose a bit more amenable, this was what they wanted. They asked, and when it wasn't forthcoming, they withdrew their statements. They made very fulsome, they gave a lot of information to the guards actually, but then they decided not to cooperate.
At that time, the identification was made, but still, we spoke to both of our sons. And in a subsequent interview with Kathleen played the recording of the 9-9. At that stage, she was denying that it was her sons.
So we decided then we would go back to Richmond Colleges and conduct another technical examination.
We're in Richmond Colleges here in Ballybuck. The scene where the murder took place is number 17, flat 1. We had been told by the state pathologist that the scene would be very similar to an abattoir, and that there would be an enormous amount of blood staining. There wasn't on our initial examination. We decided to call back out the Technical Bureau to do a full forensic examination of the crime scene. And this entailed the Technical Bureau coming out, sealing the whole flat with tape, make sure that there's no light getting in through the windows. And then they used a chemical called luminol. This chemical then detected the presence of blood.
One of the mistakes the Mulhalls made was the paper that they removed from the wall was in black plastic sacks, which were found at the bottom of the garden. The paper was repositioned on the wall. That was at last, and it was discovered that the blood particles were found behind a loud border in the wallpaper.
The forensic scientists were in a position to compare those samples to the samples of the blood that we had of Farah Noor, and we were able to confirm that he had been murdered there.
It was cleaned up very, very well by the people involved. So it took the luminol to show the minute splatters. One of the splatters was extremely small. It was described to us as being no larger than a spot of dandruff on a picture. The use of luminol was a huge forensic breakthrough with the scientists involved, and they had put a huge amount of their professional time into assisting us.
It showed that a massacre had occurred in that flat. It was appalling.
I don't think I've ever seen a crime like this in Ireland. Nothing in this sphere. It's in a league of its own.
We let Linda talk, and she talked a lot about how it affected her. How she couldn't get the smell of the intestines out of her nose, and that she was having nightmares. It was very emotional, because here you have somebody telling you about some of the most grotesque, unbelievable stuff. How would another human being do this to a person? It was of paramount importance for us to let her talk, and then when we needed to corroborate certain evidential points, we would interject with a question to make sure that she was telling the truth. Because when somebody is admitting a murder to you, you want to be 100% certain that they actually committed the murder. She was always emotional to a certain degree. She would be very calm for 10 minutes and very tearful. As an investigator, it said to me that she was very remorseful.
It just goes to show the horror of what they had to live with afterwards. Her humanity was there somewhere, wanting to kind of to clear her conscience. You'd think the idea of going to prison would be a nightmare and spending your life behind bars and losing your freedom. But actually, the real nightmare was keeping this horrific crime a secret and to themselves and not talking about it with anybody.
At the end of the interview, Linda seemed very relieved. She told us that she was very happy to have told us what had taken place. So we then went up to Talagard station because I believed it was important that her whole account would be read back over to her on audio visual in a Garda station, which we did. She also agreed that on the Sunday that she would bring us down to the canal and show us exactly what she had done, and that we would go up to Richmond Cottages and she would yet again show us, reenact what had taken place. So on the Sunday, picked her up in the patrol car and we brought her to Crow Park. It's very, very close to the scene. On that day there was a hurling match, Kilkenny and Galway, a huge crowd milling around the place. We're walking down with Linda among all the supporters from Galway and Kilkenny. They not known who Linda was or who we were. They were interested in going in and having a good game of hurling while we were interested in solving a murder.
I decided that we would come back down to flat 170 in Richmond Cottages. We parked the car over there. We get out and she walks over here with us. She then started feeling very, very unwell, sick, and she couldn't actually go into the apartment with us.
It says enormous about her that she wanted to tell us what had happened, and she was willing to go into a field in Tala with detectives and point out what she had done. Not many people would do it.
John Mulhall did get involved on the night of the killing in helping clean up the flat in Richmond Cottages. The police believe that the bloodied carpets and possibly other material was removed from the flat in the back of his van. There's evidence to support him having driven to the Liffey outside Dublin and to have got rid of the material there.
Things had taken up a pace at that stage and we were again tasked and requested to go to Leixlip. John helped in the clean-up afterwards. And he came in from Tala with the wheelie bin or whatever, brought stuff away. And then he went out to Leixlip, where he was building this patio.
The house was onto the back of the Liffey, and he dumped the wheelie bins into the Liffey. Lucky enough, there was some nosy neighbour watching him, and he took the number of the van and he reported him.
We were tasked with doing a search for discarded items from the murder scene. And again, it was several months after the actual event and a lot of water had gone down the Liffey in between. So we did a thorough search and we found a number of items. There was a wheelie bin found that linked John and his address in Tala. So it was really good, the investigation, that they could actually find an association between John and that address. 4 or 5 days later, we had the information to do the search in Tala. We're here at Sean Walsh Memorial Park and it's changed quite a bit. There was a bench just around on one of these bends here, and the information we had was that the 2 implements used in the dismemberment were in the water and they'd been thrown into the water from that park bench, or certainly within a couple of metres of that park bench. Prior to arrival, it's always good to know the waterways, but we had never had an operation in this park before. What we didn't know when we arrived was the depths of the water, and when we actually kitted up one of the divers, we put him into the water, but it was no deeper than his knees, and that would give you an indication of how unclear or how bad the visibility was. Instead of going in on scuba and breathing apparatus, it meant it was a rummage. Everybody in dry suits, shoulder to shoulder, in a line, straight out, searching, just as you'd see it on the land, one searching to the other, onwards. But that went out to grid, revolved round, and then back in. My fear, I suppose, at the time was that the water would get deeper further out, but as it was, we were able to get out probably 20 metres, and the depth was still okay. Being a man-made lake, it could get deeper, but we were lucky. It was down for everyone on the search line to be absolutely focused on what they were doing. If somebody walked on the likes of the hammer, without even noticing it, it could push it into the bed, into the soft mud, and you might never find it again. That's the danger of it. The first run of 5 out, we didn't locate anything, because that was the outer perimeter search. Then we turned to come back in, and as the 5 members came back in, Eamon Bracken located the knife, and he says, stop. Up goes the hand, and we could clearly see the knife. Well, that was a really, really good result, and the member of the investigation team, and we were all very happy, but then we had to recover it. So what happens then is we put another person in to go out around, not to interfere with the search scene, to take possession of the knife, to put it into the container that we had, so we could preserve any potential evidence on it. And then the search continued. We came back into this section here. The guys turned and headed back out again. And on the way back out, the same member located the hammer. That was terrific. We had the two of them. We were so happy. But we continued on and we searched the rest of the area just in case there was anything else discarded there that hadn't come up in the investigation. So we cleared it. There's been several cases like that where information comes in and then where the evidence is recovered, it corroborates. No one else except the person who threw it in could have known. The recovering of it makes really, really good, strong evidence.
Gardaí now had this new statement from Linda as well, which is explosive to the investigation team. It's enough evidence to make 3 arrests.
We had discussed the case with the Director of Public Prosecutions in relation to Linda, and a direction was given to charge Linda with the murder of Faris Wallinur. I went to court and I obtained a warrant to arrest her. We had sufficient grounds to arrest her, Charlotte and Kathleen for their involvement in the murder of Farnur.
Gardaí rearrested Linda and rearrested Charlotte.
Kathleen decided to skip the country. She knew that the Gardaí were onto them.
She didn't want to face the music.
We didn't know where she had gone. We thought that she had gone to relatives in Birmingham.
She'd been there for about 3 years after fleeing the country.
People just became obsessed with the trial. It uncovered this underbelly that a lot of society was ignoring.
Judge Carney said that it was the most grotesque case of killing in all his professional lifetime.
The jury took a long time to come back. They were deadlocked.
In almost every police department, there's a place where cold homicide cases gather dust. Each box contains unfinished business, evidence, interviews, in its very own murder book. These cases aren't dead, but sleeping. Each one waiting for leads and a cop to dig out the truth and finally bring a killer to justice. Midland, Michigan. Built on rock-solid blue-collar values. You work hard, you get ahead. You take care of your family, and you play by the rules. So nothing sticks in the craw of a Midland cop like an unsolved murder case. And there was one that shook up this town for nearly 32 years. Luckily, in Midland, justice doesn't have a timeline. Detective Brent Benzing. Even when he's not working, his brain still is. 24/7.
There are days I'd just like to mow the lawn. But unfortunately, I mow the lawn and I think about casework.
Since Benzing's hardwired for analysis, it's no accident that early in his career he went after a master's in anthropology and got it. But Benzing knew pretty quick he wasn't cut out for life behind a microscope.
To use today's vernacular, evidence is cool, but the largest piece of evidence is people. And I think the thing that turns me on the most is the communication with people.
In 1999, Brent Benzing Bensing traded life in the lab for a badge and a baton. He settled in Midland, a central Michigan town a lot like the one he grew up in.
I had, at one point, thought about it, working on a major case team in a bigger city. But that wasn't my speed. It's not akin to my upbringing, and I felt comfortable here with both the people and the surroundings.
Within 5 years, he was a detective. It was the perfect fit for a cerebral guy with a heart of gold.
Having a little tough go of it today, huh?
Yeah.
Let me help you out with that.
Bensing spends his time working cases from murders to runaways.
I understand you were, maybe thinking about not pressing charges.
It's too much.
Let us help you.
It's very difficult day in and day out to hear the pain and anger and hurt, but you have to learn how to compartmentalize that. When there are terrible tragedies, it's a tear in the fabric of families and culture and society. And without a stop, it continues to affect everything and everybody around it.
Okay. Let's get you in the house. Come on. I'll get these.
So when the Sheriff's Department creates a new cold case unit in 2007, Bensing is handpicked to lead the division. His first case, the one that every Midland cop, from rookie to retiree, knows backwards and forwards. The 30-year-old Doris Arndt murder book.
I think it's important to understand that when you open the murder book, that you're opening memories and sometimes wounds. I think there's a great amount of responsibility that goes with looking into cold case investigations.
I definitely have those Monday morning blues.
By 7:30 a.m., everyone at the local 8-track factory in Midland is accounted for, except for 29-year-old Doris Arndt. It's not like Doris to pull a no-show.
You hear anything, please give me a call, and I'll call you as well.
So her co-workers call her husband, John.
He hasn't seen her. I'm really worried about her.
By 8:20, Doris's husband is at the police station.
Can I help you, sir?
My wife's been missing since Friday.
It's Monday. Why are you waiting so long to report it?
John admits it's not unheard of for Doris to go off for a day by herself, especially if they've had a fight. But they didn't this time, and John is certain that something's wrong.
She never misses work on Monday. Never.
And no one knows Doris better than John. They've been together since high school.
This is harder than you think, you know.
I know.
They met when Doris was 16. John was just a few years older. She was a coal mine daughter. He was the neighborhood bad boy. A year into the romance, Doris got pregnant. So they did what expectant parents did back then. They got married.
My mom seemed to be pretty happy most of the time. She took care of the family. She went to work full time. She was so outgoing. She just engaged everybody.
John was more laid back. He let Doris have the driver's seat. And even if he didn't show it all the time, everyone knew John was just crazy about Doris.
Hopefully not too many more left. Sounds good to me.
When she was still in her early 20s, Doris landed a good-paying job, assembling 8-track tape decks. She worked hard and eventually became a union steward.
How's that wrist? It's fine. She was out there on the lines fighting every day, you know, for job rights, for fellow employees, for anything.
I'm gonna have you sit out the rest today. We can have Lorraine do them with me.
If Doris was Midland's answer to Norma Ray, John was his cool hand Luke.
It's been a long time since I've been home. My kind of work keeps me on the road.
He brought in a lot of money playing pool. He was good at it. He did very well on circuits. Back then they played for money.
Playing pool for a living wasn't exactly a steady job, and that caused problems at home.
Why do you act like I don't know where you've been, John? I knew exactly what you were doing, and you don't have anything to show for it.
Why do you always have to ask me so many questions?
Sometimes they wouldn't mix, you know, it'd become volatile, they'd break up, he'd disappear for a couple weeks.
Well, I guess that answers that question.
But then they would come back together. They couldn't live without each other.
But no matter what happened between John and Doris, their home life had never interfered with her job before.
The minute we knew she did not go to work, we knew she was hurt, injured, or dead. Somewhere.
What's your wife's name?
Police take Doris's family's concerns seriously.
Missing person reports are fairly common. The old practice was that you would wait 24 hours before you would investigate. I didn't like that policy. I wanted an inquiry made right away.
Do you remember what time?
Within hours, Sheriff James McNutt, along with other Midland detectives, began interviewing family, friends, and co-workers to piece together what happened the Friday night Doris disappeared.
She worked 5-6 days a week. She had her routine set down in stone, except for on the weekends when it was her time to unwind, which maybe she'd go out either Friday or Saturday night, and that was it.
And when Doris went out on the town, she did it without John by her side.
They never went to a bar together. There was too many problems. My dad liked the life, he liked the limelight, he liked girls hanging on him.
How much will you give me if I sink the safe ball down?
What do you have in mind? My mom liked to dance, liked to flirt, liked to smile. And guys would hang around her, and then there'd be a problem.
So even though it was unconventional, everyone knew John and Doris's solo nights on the town worked for them. And that's exactly what they'd planned the Friday she disappeared.
She liked to do her hair in like a tease. And then she had like a floppy hat that she'd put on.
Just in case.
Mom? Do you really have to go out tonight?
Honey, it's just gonna be for a few hours, okay?
Okay.
I'll be back before you know it.
She knows she's going to have more than a couple of drinks, so Doris hitches a ride with a friend from work.
And take care of your brother for me, okay?
Okay, sure. Here you go.
Oh, thank you.
I'll see you in a few hours, right?
A few hours, okay?
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
The bar is crowded, filled with locals like Doris, looking to blow off steam after a long week at work. Doris is table hopping all night.
What's that? You need a hug?
Hey, you like my shirt?
Does that line work on some girls?
Witnesses from the bar tell detectives Doris starts out in a playful mood until someone goes too far.
Don't touch my head, you creep!
Hey, I bet you called him today.
Oh, you guys think you're so funny.
Hey, we're having a good time.
I'm not having a good time. You can't just come up and sit here and touch my hat and try and take things off my body.
A little bit. Sorry.
Just don't touch the hat, okay?
Sorry.
With so many potential witnesses and suspects, detectives put together a timeline for Doris's night out. With one exception, no one remembers seeing Doris leave the bar. Not one single person.
Have you guys seen Doris anywhere? No.
Bar patrons remember her co-workers going off to an after-hours party. They say they saw the guy in the Hug Me t-shirt Doris was talking to earlier leave. And also the guy who was messing with her hat. But not Doris. It's as if Doris Arndt has simply been lost to the night. At this point, detectives have three possible scenarios to go on. Either she walked away, or was lured away without anyone noticing.
Last call, everybody.
Or someone in the bar knows more than they're telling. Two days later, Doris still hasn't turned up. And with so many of her friends and family saying this is out of character for Doris, police believe there may be something to worry about. They launch a search. A bolo, be on the lookout, with Doris's description is blasted across the state. Jerry Nielsen was a patrol officer at the time.
Right behind the bar was a wooded area, so they'd get canine units out, to see if we can't pick up any scent. There were no signs of her at all.
That tells officers Doris most likely didn't leave the bar on foot. Aerial searches, helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft sweep the county. By nightfall, no traces of her have been picked up. Detectives continue talking to everyone who was at the Western Bar right before Doris disappeared.
Interviewing all of these people was a big job, but it's the only thing we had. We didn't have any fingerprints, we didn't have a car, we didn't have any physical evidence whatsoever. She was there, she was gone, and we didn't know where she was.
She seemed to be having a good time.
In talking to some of the bar patrons, cops come across one detail that's an instant red flag. At 11 p.m., the night Doris disappeared, John's brother Eddie showed up at the Western Bar, and Eddie's no stranger to police. He's got a record for assault and petty theft.
Eddie on probation, so I knew Eddie, and I was suspicious of Eddie right away.
Uncle Eddie has been a lifelong criminal. He was in and out of prison since he could be. He was a pretty rough guy. In prison, they decided they didn't like his mouth too much, and they slit his throat from ear to ear and threw him off the second catwalk. But he lived.
I would dare.
Cops learned that Eddie and Doris had been at the bar at the same time. But they didn't talk much. Doris wasn't a fan of Eddie's. She considered him a bad influence on her husband.
Have a seat.
Bring Eddie in to talk. He's got an alibi. He says he left the bar at closing time with a woman, who later vouches for him. But even if Eddie hadn't hurt Doris, maybe he was there to check up on her for his brother. After all, John knew his wife was a big flirt, and he could be a jealous hothead on occasion.
Would you describe yourself as somebody who has a bit of a temper?
John was known to, at times, not being able to control himself in certain situations.
My dad was mean when he got drunk. He was very mean. Probably 20 times we probably picked him up from a bar just covered in blood, and it wasn't his.
When police go back to ask John about Eddie, he says he'd simply forgotten to tell them his brother had been at the bar that night. But with Eddie's criminal history and John's temper, the detectives aren't buying it.
A lot of people thought that John or Eddie had done it. They just were adamant, you really got to look at those guys.
They decided to use what's considered state-of-the-art interrogation in 1977, bringing in a polygraph expert from the Michigan State Police.
Is your name John Arndt? Yes. John, do you know where your wife is? No. Did you have anything to do with the disappearance of your wife? Hell no.
John Arndt passes with flying colors.
Did you have anything to do with the disappearance of Doris Arndt? No.
Eddie does too.
Can I go? Yes, thank you.
With no hard evidence against either Arndt brother, detectives now cast the testing net wider. Hoping to flush out a suspect, police ask bar patrons who had significant contact with Doris the night she disappeared to come in for a polygraph.
I touched her hat once and she got mouthy with me, that's all I know.
Don't touch my hat.
We looked at 3 or 4 other people that took polygraphs and they all passed.
There's one guy everyone remembers talking to Doris that night, but unlike everyone else, he hasn't stepped up to talk to police.
Hey, you like my shirt?
The guy's name is Robert Haggart, and when they run a background check on him, they find he's got a rap sheet as long as your arm. In fact, Haggart's only been out of the slammer for 2 months, on parole for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. So when he doesn't volunteer to talk to police, they track him down an hour outside of Midland.
Robert! Can we talk to you?
Sure. About what?
Just had a couple questions about last Friday night. Did you, pick up a Doris Arndt at a bar downtown?
Doris Arndt. Had a few drinks with Doris. Spoke with her.
Haggart doesn't offer up much. He says he lost track of her as the night went on and left the bar around 1 a.m.
And then what did you do? I came home. You have someone who can verify that? Yeah. Sadly, I live with my mother, so you can ask her if you want.
Haggart's mother backs up his story. Detectives sense he's hiding something, but they've got no way to prove it. Hoping to generate leads, the Midland County Sheriff's Department creates a missing persons flyer.
We had Doris sketched because there were not very good photos of her, and we put a hat on her because it was her favorite hat.
Witnesses confirmed she'd been wearing it in the bar that night. The sketch goes out to every police station within a 500-mile radius and gets picked up by the media. 4 days after Doris disappeared, a local Midland man spots something on the side of the road just 12 miles from the Western Bar.
that's where my stomach dropped. It kind of was like in slow motion. I was devastated.
It's a heartbreaking clue. But it doesn't mean Doris isn't still alive somewhere. More determined than ever to find her, detectives take another run at their number one suspect, convicted sex offender Robert Haggard.
Look, I don't know what you guys want. Some girl hit me up in a bar and you think I messed her up, right?
He became very nervous and twitching and looking different directions, and like he was trying to search for what am I going to say now. He let him look in a car, and he even the trunk of the car, the lock mechanism wasn't there, and he had to jimmy the trunk somehow to open it up for him.
Thank you.
Looks like Haggard has nothing to hide.
Hey, Robert? You wearing makeup now?
It's probably my mom's. We actually both share the car, so I'm guessing that's probably hers.
Your mom wears this kind of eyeliner.
I don't know what kind of eyeliner she wears, but I assume she wears eyeliner, yes.
Okay.
He was quite nervous. One would wonder why that was. Could it be simply because he just got out of prison, had a distrust of law enforcement, and didn't necessarily like the judicial system? Absolutely. Or could it be because he's lying? Certainly.
No, I don't wear eyeliner.
First, Haggard was one of the last people to see Doris Arndt before she disappeared. And now he has a woman's eyeliner in his trunk. It's enough to get his car impounded and turned over to the Michigan State Police.
I found something. Long brown hair. Cigarette butts, two kinds. Filtered and unfiltered.
Investigators dust for prints on anything Doris may have touched if she was in the car. And everything is sent in for analysis.
Just got back from the labs.
Days later, the results come back. In 1977, DNA testing doesn't exist. The best investigators can do with the hair samples is try to visually match them and blood type them against a sample from Doris's hairbrush. The hair matches Doris's, but it also matches thousands of other brown-haired women in Midland County. And because they have nothing but partial prints from the eyeliner pencil and cigarette butts, those results are even less conclusive.
They've got to have a certain number of matches on the fingerprint. There just wasn't enough to compare them and make a positive identification.
The only thing they can positively prove is that there are two types of cigarettes: unfiltered Pall Malls and Marlboros.
Was your wife a smoker?
Socially, yeah.
Do you know what brand?
Pall Malls, unfiltered.
Detectives have also brought along the eyeliner found in Haggard's trunk. John doesn't have a clue about Doris's makeup, but someone else in the house sure does.
I remember him asking me, do you remember what was in your mom's purse the night she left?
The answer is...
And he showed me something, and I said, it was shiny, and it looked like hers. And I broke down.
Detectives take stock of all the evidence from Haggard's car. Doris's brand of eyeliner, but not necessarily hers. Her blood type in the hair, but not necessarily her hair. Cigarettes she smokes, but no way to tie hers specifically to Haggard's ashtray. With today's technology, this could have been a slam dunk. But this was 1977. And without DNA testing, these cops have no scientific way to tie all this evidence directly to Doris.
And to prove a case on circumstantial evidence is not a good way to go to court, because you have such an easy way of losing the case. And if you lose the case, you've lost your suspect forever.
The investigation comes to a standstill. Then, 2 weeks after Doris's disappearance, they get the news no one was hoping to hear. Michigan State Police Detective Harold Januszewski known to everyone as Ski, gets a call to check out the side of a highway 55 miles outside Midland.
They said, you got a roll, we got a body. We don't know if it's a suicide, it's a murder, or whatever it is. I had a roll.
Ski is a veteran criminal investigator who transferred to Central Michigan after 12 years of detective work in Detroit.
She looks like she's been dumped here. There was no question in my mind at that time that body had been dumped there. There's nothing disturbed around it, there's no struggle, no nothing there. The only thing probably out of the ordinary was that she didn't have her shoes on.
And there's something about those stocking feet. Clinging to the victim's socks are tiny grains of sand. It makes no sense. The nearest beach is at a lake more than 15 miles away. Later that day, the body is positively ID'd. It's Doris Arndt. Ski finds himself working with the sheriff's department on the 2-week-old investigation. First thing he does, officially change the missing persons file into a murder book. Then he contacts the family.
My aunt came over, then she sat down on the bed. Come here. What's up?
Sweetheart, the police came and told us that they found Mommy.
And I kind of stepped up. And she said they found you, but she's gone.
I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm sorry.
Just a terrible feeling. You just think, dang. We were really hoping that we'd find her alive, and now we gotta go looking for a killer, a murderer.
The medical examiner conducts a thorough autopsy and collects vaginal swabs. His report reveals that Doris Arndt was sexually assaulted and then choked to death with bare hands. He can't get a clean print off Doris's body. But cops have a pretty good idea of who might be capable of such violence. The convicted sex offender Doris talked to the night she disappeared, Robert Haggart. And now that her body's been recovered, Ski heads right back to him to rattle his cage with the news, hoping he comes clean.
Those Marlboros? Yeah, you want one?
No, I'm all set, thanks. Hey, we had some questions. I didn't think he was the type of person you'd say was a killer. But what did a killer look like? You got a couple minutes?
Sure, what do you got?
What kind of car were you driving that night?
Now, I've already answered that question.
What you're trying to do is get basic information that someday, if we go to court, he's going to have to eat some of them words because he's going to try to sneak out the back door on you, and you've got him blocked off. So that's your first angle. Get that nailed down.
Honestly, how long is this going to take?
Haggart is still defiantly avoiding any questions, so Ski hits him straight on.
I'll put it simple. I know you killed Doris Arndt. If you're looking a person in the eye and you've interrogated a few people and you have a feeling. Now, I'm not saying it's always right, but you go by your experience. He's responsible for Doris Arndt's murder.
I think it's time you leave, Detective. I don't have to answer anything. Go.
Robert Haggart's been in the system long enough to know he doesn't have to cooperate.
What really haunts me the most is that there's no doubt in your mind who did it. But you can't have enough evidence to charge him. And he's out there on the street.
For months, the sheriff's department and the state police watch Haggart like a hawk. But he keeps his mouth shut and his nose clean.
It is extremely frustrating, particularly when you think, and we did, that we knew who had done the deed.
My dad, he cried a lot. He was upset and he wanted him found and punished. saying they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They didn't have enough evidence.
If you got a case and you know who did it, you can prove it. You wake up at night thinking about it, yes.
A little more than a year after her body was discovered, Doris's case is put on the inactive list. The polite way of saying cold as ice. It looks like Robert Haggart's getting away with murder.
There was simply not enough probable cause to indicate that, one, Miss Arndt went with him that night, either willingly or unwilling, and two, whether or not Mr. Haggart caused her demise.
The case is officially shelved. Gone to the cold case room. Gone, but not forgotten. Detective Harold Januszewski skied to his friends, chews on the one that got away. But he also keeps Haggart on his radar. Notes when his number one suspect gets married and moves to another county. For 3 years, everything is quiet. Until a bitter cold night in February 1982, when all hell breaks loose. It's the worst mass murder in the history of Clare County, Michigan. Just 50 miles from Midland. One family, the Post family, wiped out.
One of the deputies said, "Tommy, better get up here. We've got 5 people they thought were dead at the time at one location." But the body count kept rising as I was there.
George Post, mail carrier and school board member, gunned down. His wife and one daughter, dead in the kitchen. Outside, his daughter-in-law, huddled over the bodies of her children, aged 10, 8, and 7. All dead. Except for one. A 1-year-old, found half frozen but alive on the floorboard of the truck.
They were salt of the earth type folks. They lived a kind of typical rural lifestyle. And they were just good people. Around the community, I mean, it was absolute shock. Kind of took people's breath away.
They were a loving, wholesome family. But detectives soon find out they had one dangerous enemy. The daughter lying dead in the kitchen was going through a messy divorce after just 4 months of marriage to a man named Robert Haggart.
A terrible story to report this morning. An entire family was found murdered in Clare County.
A full-scale manhunt is launched. Police put out a nationwide bolo on the stolen Post family car. 2 days later, they find it in Tennessee, with Haggart at the wheel and the murder weapon under the seat.
So many lives were lost. Again, because they didn't catch him. I felt bad for the other family, because I knew they'd go through the same thing we did. I don't understand how one human being can inflict that much pain on people. I don't understand it.
If only we could have, found the evidence that we needed, we could have had him in jail and this never would have happened. It's just horrible. Absolutely horrible.
8 months later, Haggart gets life in prison without the possibility of parole for the 7 murders. But for the Midland cops, the only way for justice to be truly served is to nail this cold-blooded psychopath for the murder of Doris Arndt.
I waited until all of his appeal periods had run their course. And when they did, I drove down to State Prison of Southern Michigan. They brought Bob Haggart out, and I said, "Bob, You're sentenced here for life. You can't get out. You know that. Tell me about the Doris Hart case. Tell me about Doris Hart. And he said, I had nothing to do with it.
The next time anyone hears of Haggard, it's 2003. He's dead after losing a battle to cancer.
Well, he had it coming. He did it, he had it coming. He killed 7 people. He deserved to die in prison.
But Haggard's death doesn't put an end to the Midland Police Force's obsession with proving he was Doris's killer.
It's certainly not time where you just hang it up and you don't blow it off. Now it's time to see if maybe people will talk because he's deceased.
And now, after 30 years and thousands of man-hours, the closing of Doris Arndt's murder book is Benzing's #1 priority.
I do think that one needs to look at every cold case homicide as if it is solvable. I think it's important emotionally to be able to get in the mindset that there's always a possibility. Great research had been done into the investigation, but there's also physical evidence that could be analyzed using new technology.
DNA analysis has come a long way since 1977, so Benzing goes right to the vaginal swab stored for decades in Doris's murder book, and then grabs Haggard's DNA from the post-family murder book.
Luckily, that sample had been saved all these years.
But DNA samples stored for decades have been known to break down, and Benzing knows he can't pin all his hopes on the evidence being tested in the lab. So while he waits for results, Benzing goes back to Doris's murder book looking for any clues that would pin Haggard conclusively to her murder. And sometimes, out of the blue,
Benzing.
Cops just get lucky.
Yes, I do have the Arndt murder book. It's about 3 inches from my elbow. Who's asking?
Turns out Benzing's not the only one interested in this case.
A journalist in Arizona had been filing Freedom of Information Act requests to the Michigan State Police on the homicides committed by Mr. Haggard with the Post family, and also investigating him for the homicide of Doris Arndt.
And that grabs Benzing's attention, because Haggard's suspected involvement in Doris's murder has never been made public. So he gives the writer a call.
Well, just have a question for you. Looks like you've been asking for information about 2 separate murder cases that occurred here in Michigan, and just curious to know, the reasons why.
That's a long story.
Well, I've got all the time in the world. Why don't you share that with me?
The guy's name is Danny Piowasek.
I knew Haggard from high school.
When Piowasek saw on the news that his old classmate was convicted of mass murder, he hoped to use his connection to him to write a book. Piowasek reached out to Haggard in prison, and that's when Haggard casually made a shocking confession.
Mr. Piowasek had advised me that Mr. Haggard did admit to committing the homicide of Doris Arndt. Even though it's a third-party admission, we have identified someone after 31 years that had made the allegations that, Mr. Haggard confessed to the crime.
Why didn't you bring that information forward 8 years ago when you first heard it?
I promised Haggard that it would just be between the 2 of us.
Piowasek kept his mouth shut, and even after Haggard died, he tried to confirm his story without talking to police. But there were too many facts that needed to be checked. And now here he is saying he can fill in all the blank pages of Doris's murder book.
Why don't you tell me some details about his confession?
How about you give me some details about Haggard and this Doris for my book?
Mr. Piowasek is an extremely intelligent man. I understood where he was coming from, and the first part of our conversations where we were both quite guarded in giving each other information.
I got time.
Benzing is a master at the game of cat and mouse. He tells Piowasek he'll help him if the journalist can describe very specific details about Doris's murder from Haggard's confession.
She was drunk, coming on to me like crazy. So I told her to sneak out and meet me in my car. Said I'd give her a ride home.
Do you like my new haircut? I just started going to a new girl.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Thanks.
We smoke some, listen to the radio.
In this world we're living, it's hard to trust your neighbor anymore.
We ended up at the park and walked down by the lake. No one's around, so we do it, The dumb bitch says I raped her, that she's gonna turn me in. I'd only been out 3 months, so if they send me back, I'd die in prison. So I had to shut her up.
Even though it's Haggard's version of the way things played out, certain aspects of his stories support the physical evidence in Doris's murder book. But Benzing needs more. Something tangible that proves his confession was the real deal.
Just one more question. Did he mention what beach that was?
Sanford Lake.
Sanford Lake is a popular recreation area about 12 miles from the bar where Doris was last seen. When Doris's body was found on the side of the highway, she had sand on her socks. And if the sand taken as evidence contained in her murder book matches the sand from Sanford Lake, then Haggard's confession is real. No one knew where Doris went the night she disappeared but the killer. Benzing contacts Michigan's foremost forensic geologist, Robert Hayes, a rock star in analyzing soil, dirt, and sand from crime scenes. Benzing wants Hayes to help him forensically prove that Doris was killed at Sanford Lake. So he has him pull a sample there. And to make sure he doesn't sway the outcome, he has Hayes take samples from 3 other locations in the area as well, without ever mentioning Haggard's confession. Back in his lab, Hayes compares the sand from Doris's murder book to the 4 locations.
I'm comparing grain to grain, looking at, are there similarities between, is it limestone, is it silica, sand, just what might be there. After looking at all the data and all the samples, my conclusion was that the Sanford Lake site was the location Doris Arndt was murdered at.
Those results change everything. The moment every cop in Midland has been dreaming about for 30 years finally happens. Cops now have hard physical evidence pinning Doris Arndt's murder on that slippery, no-good liar, Robert Haggard.
It was an exciting moment. Finally, a large piece of the puzzle had come together.
And there's one more thing that Benzing wants to follow up on. So he makes his way to Haggard's mother's house, looking for Haggard's personal effects from prison.
That's all that's left.
Mr. Piawasek had told me that there was some sort of physical evidence left. An evidentiary remnant of this homicide that was kept by Mr. Haggard all these years.
He finds a lock of brown hair. When the hair is analyzed by the state crime lab, it's a positive DNA match to Doris Arndt.
We were so thankful that it actually came to light that he was the one that did it. Because in your mind, you want confirmation. You want somebody else telling you, yes, this is the person that took your mom from you. So I'm thankful. Very thankful.
Being able to state that we do believe we found the person responsible for the death of your mother and wife, that set us free. I take it as being an incredible honor to have been part of that. I'm working with people, not for people.